Chapter 1601. Usually, Ning Shu was very low-key in the mansion. He would do everything secretly at night. Please search, to see the most complete. The fastest to update. Ning Shu gave the little beggar some food and asked him to keep an eye on the Yin family. The last time Yi Qing came to visit, Ning Shu always felt that Yi Qing had something to tell him. She probably had some concerns. Speaking of which, she and Yi Qing were on opposite sides. Zhuo Che Ran was a member of the royal family. If he wanted to treat a woman well, if he wanted a woman, there was basically no woman in the world who could oppose him. Gu Fanlu was sick. When he got a little better, Ning Shu went to his room and wandered around. The next day, Gu Fanlu fell seriously ill again. Old Madam invited several doctors to take turns to treat Gu Fanlu. She was afraid that her sister's grandson would die in Marquis Xianping's fu. Even if the sick Gu Fanlu's mind was muddled, she could still guess some things. She was still lying on the bed when she told Old Madam that she wanted to move out. How could Old Madam let Gu Fanlu go out to recuperate alone? She insisted on making Gu Fanlu stay. Gu Fanlu's face turned pale. Stay my ass. Gu Fanlu knew that she had been tricked. This time, she made him sick. Next time, she might make him die. This was most likely done by Marquis Xianping. Gu Fanlu insisted on leaving, saying that she was so seriously ill that it might be an epidemic. It would not be good to infect the people of Marquis Xianping's manor. The old madam had no choice but to send a few people to serve Gu Fanlu. Gu Fanlu was carried out of Marquis Xianping's residence. Ning Shu stood in the pavilion and watched Gu Fanlu leave from afar. Little Qing really went with them. What good luck. Lian Xiao stomped her feet and curled her lips. She's there to serve someone, not to be his pillow. Why are you so agitated? Ning Shu said indifferently. Most likely, Lian Xiao had suffered in the hands of Shao Qing in the past, so she would seize the opportunity to mock and ridicule Shao Qing. Ning Shu turned to look for Old Madam. Ning Shu bowed. Granddaughter greets grandmother. Zhuru, come to grandmother. Dowager Duchess Ning Shu beckoned. Ning Shu walked over and asked Old Madam with a smile, cousin is so sick. How can we send him away? What will Grandaunt think? Cousin, even if you want to leave, you have to wait until you're seriously ill. Ning Shu said as he massaged the Dowager Duchess's shoulders. Being pressed by Ning Shu like this, the old madam felt very comfortable. She squinted her eyes and said, Fan Lu insisted on leaving. She said that she was afraid of passing the disease to us. Ning Shu said softly, cousin doesn't want to implicate us, but we can't think that way. Great-aunt must have a grudge against grandmother. Grandmother also doesn't want others to say that our Marquis Xianping's residence is harsh and merciless, throwing people out when we see them sick. The Dowager Duchess was so comfortable that she was about to fall asleep. When she heard Ning Shu's words, she said, it's indeed not very appropriate. Cousin said that he was afraid of passing the disease, but the people who serve him are not sick. This means that cousin doesn't have the disease. Grandmother, is it comfortable? It's really what granddaughter learned from medicine. It can promote blood circulation, remove blood stasis, and relieve fatigue. Ning Shu changed the topic. It's very comfortable. Zhuru is still filial. In the future, when you have nothing to do, come and give grandmother a massage. Ning Shu's voice was light as he agreed. The Dowager Duchess was old and went to take an afternoon nap. After that, the sick Gu Fanlu was carried back to Marquis Xianping's residence. No matter how much Gu Fanlu didn't want to come back, her delicate body was still weak. She was carried back to Marquis Xianping's residence. Ning Shu stood in the pavilion and looked at the weak Gu Fanlu. Ning Shu didn't go near Gu Fanlu. There was no need to flaunt his prowess and make Gu Fanlu suspicious. If Gu Fanlu was suspicious, it would arouse Zhuo Qiren's suspicion. She was just an ordinary girl in the inner courtyard. She didn't step out of the house and only embroidered. Miss, young master doesn't find it troublesome to go back and forth like this. When will the illness be cured? Lien Xiao was a straightforward girl. She asked whatever was on her mind. Ning Shu said, just walk around and breathe in the fresh air. Then the illness will be cured. Lien Xiao's face was full of question marks. Ning Shu returned to his courtyard and picked up the embroidery to embroider the word longevity. After a while, it would be the Dowager Duchess's 60th birthday. Miss, Sister Cui, who serves Madam, came over. She said that Madam has something to discuss with you. Ning Shu put down the embroidery and moved his neck. He asked, did Cui say anything? The Marquis is also here. Ning Shu tidied up and followed Cui to Madame Ronggua's courtyard. Ning Shu entered the room and felt that the atmosphere was very tense. Marquis Xian Ping's face was dark as he drank tea. Madame Ronggua looked helpless. Ning Shu bowed. Father, what happened? Madame Ronggua couldn't help but sigh. She looked at Ning Shu with eyes full of love and helplessness. Marquis Xian Ping put the teacup on the table and said directly, the marriage between Marquis Xian Ping and Prince Xian can't go through. Ning Shu's expression didn't change. Your daughter will listen to father. Marquis Xian Ping's expression became slightly better. Aren't you going to ask father why? No matter what father does, it is for the sake of the Marquis Xian Ping's residence, Ning Shu said. From today onwards, you will be infected with a serious illness. When the time comes, father will cancel this marriage. Madame Ronggua spoke. Marquis, why must you be infected with a serious illness? This is too unfair to Zhu Ru. Who will dare to marry Zhu Ru in the future? Why not find an enlightened monk and say that their 8 characters are not compatible? Back then, when our 8 characters were matched, it was said to be a heaven-sent match. Now, you say that our 8 characters are not compatible. Do you think others are stupid? How should I explain this to His Majesty? Marquis Xian Ping's residence had a headache. He really couldn't figure out how he had offended Zhuo Cheiran to the point that he wouldn't let him go. It wasn't easy for him to gather 3 million taels and 20,000 dan of grain. In the end, Zhuo Cheiran was still not satisfied and told His Majesty that the disaster in Hanyang was too serious and there was already a riot. This bit of money was not enough. Zhuo Cheiran had always been liked by His Majesty and he agreed with Zhuo Cheiran's words. He also felt that this bit of money was a bit too little. Marquis Xian Ping really wanted to curse. Marquis Xian Ping didn't want to marry his daughter over now. Of course, the one who would suffer was still his daughter, regardless of whether she was married or not. Madame Ronggua's heart ached for her daughter. This was the legitimate daughter of Marquis Xian Ping's residence. She had been raised well, learned poetry, followed rules and etiquette. Her daughter, who had been raised with great difficulty, was ruined just like that. Not to mention that this was trampling on Marquis Xian Ping's residence's face, not to mention that this was her own daughter. What do you think? Marquis Xian Ping felt a little guilty when he saw that Ning Shu didn't make a fuss or cry. Ning Shu bowed. Daughter will listen to father. Father doesn't want daughter to marry into Prince Xian's residence because he loves daughter dearly. Daughter understands this in her heart. Marrying into Prince Xian's residence would be a disaster. Marquis Xian Ping's residence would be destroyed. Su Zhu Ru would be circling around in the mountains of romance, singing decadent songs of romance. Her heart was already riddled with holes and was incomparably vicissitudes of life. She had originally thought that. Chapter 1602. Marquis Xian Ping did not force her to marry him because he felt sorry for her. Actually, it was just a daughter. It did not matter if she married him. At most, he would sacrifice a daughter. Firstly, he felt sorry for his daughter. Secondly, he could not vent his anger by marrying his daughter to someone who was so against him. Although he would rather let his daughter get infected with a bad disease and sacrifice her life than marry the daughter of the Marquis of Xianping to someone else. The Marquis of Xianping was not so despicable. Prince Xian's residence is too much. Marquis Xianping was so angry that he could die. He gave them money but did not get a good word from them. "Father, I am in the backyard and do not understand what happened. Why is His Highness so against you?" Ning Shu asked curiously. "But father, what is the difference between your political views and Prince Xian's?" Marquis Xianping took a sip of tea and glanced at Ning Shu. "When I go to court, I am so sleepy that I want to sleep." Ning Shu understood immediately. Marquis Xianping did not participate in such matters. He just wanted to earn money and be the royal family's money bag. This was the way to survive in the Marquis of Xianping's residence. Ning Shu took out a piece of paper from his long sleeve and said, "Father, take a look." Marquis Xianping took it and looked at it. "Why are you collecting my handwriting?" "Father, take a closer look." Marquis Xianping looked carefully. "Where did you find it?" "Cousin seems to admire father and is imitating father's handwriting." Marquis Xianping's expression changed. Could it be that he is plotting against the Su family's property? Ning Shu was speechless. "Father, it's not just about the Su family's business. If you want to do something else, alright, don't go out so often in the future and recuperate well." Ning Shu waved his hand. Ning Shu bowed. Madame Ronghua looked at Ning Shu worriedly. Ning Shu smiled at her comfortably. She and Zhuo Cheiran did not have a good ending. Now, the entire Marquis of Xianping's residence was standing behind her. No matter what, it was better than being in the past, swaying in the wind and rain without any roots. Lian Xiao looked at Ning Shu with teary eyes. Ning Shu smiled indifferently. She was not pitiful at all. Furthermore, she would not argue with Marquis Xianping's estate and say that she did not care about her happiness. "Don't act like this in the future," Ning Shu said with a smile. "Young miss, you can still laugh. Really, what will others think of you in the future?" Ning Shu didn't care. With so many mouths, he couldn't control them at all. Therefore, he could only deceive himself and not hear anything. If you want to say it, then say it. Spirit is very important. After that, Marquis Xianping used the excuse that his daughter had contracted a serious illness and that Prince Xian Manor and Marquis Xianping Manor were not suitable to be in-laws to cancel the engagement. Both parties wanted to break off the engagement. His Majesty felt that he could not let his nephew marry a sickly woman. The annulment of the engagement was unexpectedly smooth, and both parties cancelled the marriage contract. After that, Ning Shu became the laughingstock of the capital. Everyone said that she didn't have the good fortune to become the heir's wife. Even the servants of the Marquis Xianping estate looked at Ning Shu strangely. When such a thing happened, it was a woman's reputation that was damaged. Ning Shu was incomparably calm. When she had nothing to do, she would go and massage old madame's body. Ronghua Furen would always send good things to her room. With great fanfare, it was obvious that she wanted to support Ning Shu. Now that there was no one blocking Zhuo Cheiran's path, he didn't know if Zhuo Cheiran would still take action against Marquis Xianping. Ning Shu was a little uncertain about Zhuo Cheiran's style of doing things. Sometimes he would cut the weeds and eliminate the roots, and sometimes he would not overdo it. Ning Shu turned a blind eye to the surrounding gazes. She did what she should do. Contracting a serious illness was just an excuse. Ning Shu was not angry, but Lian Xiao was as angry as a toad all day long. Her stomach was full of anger. Once she heard something, she would be so angry that she wanted to explode on the spot. "Young miss, you can still embroider. Do you know what those people are saying?" Lian Xiao wished she could snatch the needle and thread from Ning Shu's hands. Ning Shu said calmly, if you are angry, they won't say anything. Alright, there is nothing to be angry about. Young miss, are you going to become a monk? Lien Xiao looked at Ning Shu and asked, Young miss, are you disheartened? Ning Shu. Your young miss's heart is burning. I love life, I love life. Lien Xiao wanted to say something, but it was a little quiet outside the courtyard. Lien Xiao hurried out. Young miss, the gatekeeper said that there are beggars coming from the back door. Lien Xiao said. Ning Shu nodded, get some buns for those beggars. Go and ask them what happened. It was not strange for beggars to come to Marquis Xian Ping's residence. Everyone knew that Marquis Xian Ping's residence was rich and imposing. Sometimes they could ask for some food. Yes. Ning Shu picked up the needle and thread and continued to embroider the word longevity. Not long after, Lien Xiao came back. Ning Shu said, Young miss, His Highness the Crown Prince has swaggered to the Yin residence. Now everyone knows that Chua Cheran likes Miss Yin. He said that he broke off the engagement because of Miss Yin. Lien Xiao looked at Ning Shu's calm face and stomped her foot, Young Mississippi. Lien Xiao was exasperated that Lien Xiao did not live up to her expectations. Ning Shu said helplessly, Then what do you want me to do? I have nothing to do with the Crown Prince of Prince Xian anymore. Whatever I do, it will only be a joke. Some people are just waiting to watch the show. It really makes one feel aggrieved. Lien Xiao hammered her chest, Young miss should teach Miss Yin a lesson. So what if I teach her a lesson? If she wanted to teach her a lesson, she would teach Chua Cheran a lesson. If she killed one woman, Chua Cheran would still have other women. Women were as numerous as chives, coming in batches. Even if Chua Cheran had promised to be with Yi Qing for life, it did not mean that Chua Cheran would fancy other women. In Lien Xiao's heart, she really wished that she could chew Yi Qing alive. Lien Xiao was after all a teenage girl. Encountering such a situation, she was furious. Ning Shu shook her head. What was there to be angry about? Ning Shu put down her embroidery and went to greet Madame Ronghua. Madame Ronghua felt guilty towards Ning Shu. She kept all the good things in Ning Shu's arms. How are you feeling today? Madame Ronghua asked Ning Shu. Ning Shu smiled and said, My daughter's face is like a peach blossom. You are so beautiful. Of course, my health is good. Loquacious. Madame Ronghua glanced at Ning Shu. Did father tell you about the imperial court? Is Prince Xian's residence still targeting father? Ning Shu asked. Madame Ronghua thought for a while and said, I did not hear your father mention this. However, he donated another 1 million taels of silver, saying that Hanyang is in turmoil. Ning Shu understood. Chua Cheran still did not give up on targeting Marquis Xuanping's residence. Perhaps Marquis Xuanping's money was too eye-catching. Money could make the devil turn millstones. Some rioters directly rushed into the county yamen and injured many people. This military expenditure made your father unable to sleep well for a few nights. Madame Ronghua sighed. Ning Shu thought for a while and said, Mother, Marquis Xuanping's business is too big. Eating meat together was the right thing to do. That was how helpless it was. His Majesty was definitely dissatisfied with this small amount of money and wanted to get a share of the Su family's business. Chapter 1603. Chua Cheran was His Majesty's beloved nephew, so he definitely knew about His Majesty's intentions. Many factors made Chua Cheran speak up for His Majesty. Zhu Ru, this is a matter of the imperial court. Don't ask about it. Madame Ronghua said. Yes. Ning Shu also wanted to find out if Chua Cheran would be leading the army to suppress the riot this time. It was not good for girls to ask about these things. In the middle of the night, Ning Shu changed her clothes and went to the Yin family. She needed to observe I Ching and see if I Ching had already opened her heart to Zhuo Qiran. From Ning Shu's initial impression of I Ching was a woman who knew how to scheme. In the plot, the army was in her hands. And Zhuo Qiran seemed to trust her completely. In order to repay Zhuo Qiran, Qing provided weapons and built an army for Zhuo Qiran, which became the important weapon of the country and a divine weapon to intimidate small countries. It was enough to love someone, and the remaining 30% loved him. I Ching had a backup plan to protect him, which meant that I Ching was a woman with a clear mind. Ning Shu approached the Yin family and released her spiritual power to check if there were any secret guards guarding the Yin family. There were secret guards guarding several places, probably to protect I Ching. There were two sides to everything. It could be said to be protection, but it could also be said to be surveillance. I Ching was probably unhappy. If I Ching refused, Zhuo Qiran would only force her to accept it. The overbearing prince's courtship was so good and overbearing. With the help of her spiritual power, Ning Shu avoided the secret guards and arrived not far from I Ching's courtyard. There were more people guarding I Ching's courtyard, so Ning Shu could only release her spiritual power to check. I Ching was already asleep. Her hand under the blanket was holding the pistol. Her eyelashes were trembling. Obviously, she was not sleeping soundly. I Ching was on guard against someone. Ning Shu thought for a moment and knew that the overbearing prince broke into her room in the middle of the night, flirted with her, and took advantage of her. Some women liked this, and some didn't. Ning Shu couldn't imagine that such a thing would happen in ancient times, where a woman's reputation was regarded as heaven. If someone found out, it would be a fatal blow to a woman. Meeting her lover at night, tsk, I Ching didn't seem to buy it. Ning Shu heard the sound of the window opening. Someone had entered I Ching's room. I Ching grabbed the gun and pointed it at Zhuo Qiran. Zhuo Qiran held the gun, his expression unchanged. "It's me." Zhuo Qiran didn't know enough about guns to be able to hold the barrel so calmly. I Ching was furious. The other party wasn't afraid of guns, but she didn't dare to shoot. If she killed a crown prince, the entire Yin family wouldn't be enough to pay for it. There was nothing they could do about the oppression of power. "Look at how angry you are." Zhuo Qiran was also somewhat helpless. "In 2 days, I'll be going to Hanyang to suppress the riot. I'm already leaving, yet you're still so aggressive." I Ching's expression relaxed. "Then I wish you success." Zhuo Qiran squeezed onto the bed. I Ching wanted to push him away, but Zhuo Qiran grabbed her hand. "Imperial uncle only gave me 800 troops. I don't even know if I can come back." I Ching frowned and didn't say anything. Zhuo Qiran looked at I Ching with gentle and lingering eyes. "When I come back, I'll ask for your father's hand in marriage. I'll treat you well and promise you that you'll only have one person for the rest of your life." I Ching felt bitter in her heart. She looked at Zhuo Qiran who was holding her. He was really charming and outstanding, making people's hearts beat. Especially when he said such words, it made people dazzled. To be able to have such a husband, it was a blessing from her previous life. I Ching didn't understand in her heart whether Zhuo Qiran really liked her or the thing in her hands. Or the person and thing he wanted. People who fell in love were always paranoid. I Ching thought for a moment and put the gun in her hand in Zhuo Qiran's hand. "Take this to protect yourself." "What is this?" "I see that you're carrying it. It's quite heavy. It's made of iron. It's quite exquisite." Zhuo Qiran said carelessly. He put the gun aside and kept his eyes on I Ching. Ning Shu listened to the sweet words, chuckled, and turned to leave. Zhuo Qiran was going to suppress the riot and was not in the capital, which was conducive to her plan. And the riot could not be suppressed in a day. Ning Shu really suspected that Zhuo Qiran was the emperor's illegitimate son. There were so many generals in the court, but he insisted on letting a Shitzi take command. It was obvious that he was giving credit to Zhuche Ran. Princes, father, were the biological ones. Those princes probably would not let go of such a good opportunity. After all, it was a riot. It was not impossible for them to die. Ning Shu returned to Marquis Xian Ping's residence, took off his clothes, and then sat cross-legged on the bed to cultivate. 2 days later, Zhuche Ran took nearly 1,000 soldiers and horses to Hanyang to suppress the riot. He went to the city gate under the cheerful farewell of the people. Ning Shu stood at the door of the tea house and released a stream of energy toward Zhuche Ran, who was walking in front. As a result, the energy did not hit Zhuche Ran. Instead, it startled the horse under Zhuche Ran and made Zhuche Ran avoid the energy. Animal senses were the most sensitive. Zhuche Ran accidentally avoided the energy. This was what made the villain the most helpless. The protagonist was the one who was doted on by the heavens. Although Zhuche Ran avoided the energy, the horse was startled, causing the troops to be in chaos. They panicked for a while before calming down again. Such a commotion cast a shadow over people's hearts. Such a thing happening before the expedition was a warning from the heavens. The morale was a lot lower, and they were no longer as valiant and high-spirited as before. Ning Shu wiped her face. The person she wanted to deal with was Zhuche Ran. She could make Zhuche Ran uncomfortable. After missing the opportunity, Ning Shu also gave up. Zhuche Ran left the city, and the emperor sent a deputy general to chase after him. Obviously, he was also muttering in his heart. He was afraid that the imperial court soldiers would not be able to suppress the rebels. It was really embarrassing. Ning Shu put down the teacup and planned to go back. When she opened the door, she met Yi Qing in the cubicle. Yi Qing saw Ning Shu and hurriedly bowed, "Miss Su." Ning Shu also returned the greeting, "Miss Yin. Let's go have a cup of tea." Ning Shu smiled and invited. Yi Qing thought for a moment and was about to agree when a female guard beside Yi Qing immediately blocked in front of Yi Qing and looked at Ning Shu warily. "Miss Yin is not feeling well. She is going back to the residence now." Ning Shu did not look at the female guard, but looked at Yi Qing. "Are you not feeling well?" "I was rude." "Hong Ling, stand to the side," Yi Qing said with some displeasure. Hong Ling immediately said, "Miss, the heir said to let you go to the side. I want to talk to Miss Su." Yi Qing had a smile on her face. "Let's go in and talk." Ning Shu asked the waiter to serve the pastries and tea again. Ning Shu said gently, "The heir will come back with meritorious service. At that time, he will marry you with 10 miles of red dowry." "Miss Su." Yi Qing did not know what to say. Chapter 1604. Yi Qing naturally knew that Zhuche Ran and Marquis Xuanping's legitimate daughter had broken off the engagement. Many people looked at her strangely. They all said that it was because of her that the engagement was broken off. Yi Qing also felt a lot of pressure. Yi Qing couldn't ignore others. Ning Shu said carelessly, "I understand feelings. Even if I marry him, I won't have a good life." Yi Qing didn't know if she really didn't care or if she was pretending. If it were her, she would definitely pull out a gun and kill someone if her fiancé was stolen. Facing Yi Qing's suspicious gaze, Ning Shu said, "Zhuche Ran threatened me in private. He said that even if I married him, I would only be a nominal consort. Sometimes I think it's not bad to marry him like this. The consort has a noble status and a luxurious life. Moreover, it's good for the heir to make the woman he likes his concubine." Yi Qing couldn't see through this legitimate daughter of Marquis Xuanping's residence. Was she angry or not? "Drink tea. The tea is getting cold." Ning Shu picked up the teacup and said to Yi Qing. Yi Qing nodded and raised the teacup for Ning Shu. Hong Ling stared intently at Ning Shu, holding the sword at his waist. He was afraid that Ning Shu would do something to Yi Qing. "Hong Ling, you can go out." Yi Qing said to Hong Ling, Mississippi. Hong Ling didn't agree and refused to go out. Yi Qing frowned. "Go out first. Your master said that if you follow me, you have to listen to me." Seeing that Yi Qing was angry, Hong Ling could only go out. Ning Shu said with a smile, "The heir is so good to you. He even sent someone to protect you." Yi Qing looked bitter. "You saw it too. She's the heir's woman after all. She's not very obedient." Ning Shu propped up his chin, reached his finger into the teacup, dipped it in the water, and wrote the word freedom. "That's because the heir values you. Others might not have such an honor," Ning Shu said as he wrote. Yi Qing could not understand what Ning Shu meant. Logically speaking, they were still rivals in love. Yi Qing's heart was a mess. If she didn't have the army, there would be nothing to say about Chua Ran treating her like this. After all, the weak were protected by the strong and depended on the strong. However, she had an army in her hands, and the supplies of this army were enough to cause a coup and wash the palace with blood. With confidence and strength, Yi Qing didn't like the feeling of being controlled like this. Yi Qing didn't answer Ning Shu's question. She coughed and said, "I'm not feeling well. I have to go." Ning Shu nodded and looked at Yi Qing's back. "Miss, why are you so courteous to her?" Lian Qiao's lips curled into a smile. "Don't tell me you want me to argue with her. Some things are not as simple as they seem on the surface." Ning Shu left the tea house and sat on the sedan chair to return to the Marquis Xian Ping estate. After washing up, Ning Shu went to give old madam a massage. "Grandmother, does grandaunt know that cousin is sick?" Matriarch Ning Shu asked. "Your father wrote a letter to tell her." Matriarch looked at Ning Shu massaging her leg. "I don't know when your cousin will recover from his illness. Have you gone to see him?" Ning Shu shook his head. "There are differences between men and women. I just broke off the engagement. It's not appropriate for me to meet cousin." "Grandmother, cousin is grandaunt's beloved grandson. She must be very anxious. How about letting cousin go back?" With an outsider like Gu Fanlu around, the Marquis Xian Ping estate couldn't carry out large-scale construction and renovate the ancestral hall. Something eye-catching would definitely be found. Previously, when they carried Gu Fanlu into the Marquis Xian Ping estate, it was to keep Gu Fanlu under their noses to prevent her from scheming with Chua Cheran. Matriarch also had a headache. But what if the bumpy ride worsens cousin's illness? Gu Fanlu was now a hot potato. If anything happened to her in the estate, the Gu family would come to the Marquis Xian Ping estate and fight it out with them. But if they sent Gu Fanlu away and something happened on the way, the Gu family would blame them for chasing away a seriously ill person. If the bumpy ride worsened the illness, she would die. No matter what they did, it would be a fucking trap. They were kind enough to take her in, but the two families would become enemies. Ning Shu pressed Matriarch's acupoints and said, "Cousin is from the south and has never lived in the north. Naturally, he can't adapt to the weather in the north. When he goes back, his body will naturally get better. Let grandaunt's family come and pick him up." Ning Shu said briskly. Matriarch nodded. "Let your father handle this. Don't pinch anymore. I'll go and take a nap." Ning Shu helped Matriarch to sleep and waited for a while. When Matriarch fell asleep, he took out a silver needle and inserted it into her acupoints. When one got older, their body would have all kinds of problems. Ning Shu kept the silver needle and closed the door when he left. Lian Qiao, who was guarding the door, quickly fanned Ning Shu. "Miss, quickly wipe your sweat." Lian Qiao took a handkerchief and wiped Ning Shu's sweat. The weather was hot and Matriarch was old, so there was no ice in the house. Ning Shu saw that Lian Qiao's forehead was also sweating. "You should wipe it too." It's hot standing outside. I'm fine. After leaving Matriarch's courtyard, Ning Shu went to Madame Ronggua's courtyard. Madame Ronggua said unhappily, "Don't you feel tired running back and forth? Is your grandmother asleep?" Ning Shu smiled and said, "Grandmother is already asleep." "Mother, are you blaming me for not massaging your shoulders? I'll do the same for you." "Alright, you're tired too. You're filial to your grandmother, how can I blame you?" Madame Ronggua asked someone to bring a bowl of sour plum soup to Ning Shu. Ning Shu drank the sour plum soup and asked, "Mother, what has father been busy with recently?" "Juru, these things are not for the women in the inner courtyard to worry about," Madame Ronggua said earnestly. Ning Shu put down the bowl of sour plum soup and said with a smile, "Mother, I'm worried about Marquis Xian Ping's residence. I was born in Marquis Xian Ping's residence and have been living in luxury since young. I won't do anything out of line. I've never thought of leaving the inner courtyard. I can no longer establish a relationship with Prince Xian's residence for my family. I've already made Marquis Xian Ping's residence lose face." Ning Shu said sincerely. "Wretched girl, you're the only one who knows how to talk." Madame Ronggua poked Ning Shu's forehead. "Don't jump up and down just because you're a little smart. No one in this world is really stupid. Your father isn't really stupid either." Ning Shu rubbed her forehead. "I'll follow mother's teachings. What has father been doing recently? I haven't seen him at all." "Your father? I don't know either." Ning Shu was speechless. "You're a little naughty." Ning Shu came out of Madame Ronggua's courtyard with an ugly expression. She sighed in her heart. After all, Madame Ronggua was doing it for her own good. Marquis Xian Ping's residence didn't lack a pair of chopsticks. Madame Ronggua hoped that she would be safe and sound. Ning Shu walked to the front of the ancestral hall. The door of the ancestral hall looked very shabby. It was hard to imagine that there was a lot of gold inside. After Gu Fanlo left, she had to get Marquis Xian Ping to fix up this ancestral hall. In ancient times, filial piety was a priority. How could the ancestral hall built by the ancestors be demolished? The place where the memorial tablets were placed was full of gold. Even when they were underground, they could still enjoy such glory. Chapter 1605. Men die for wealth and birds die for food. Marquis Xuanping's residence was destroyed because they had too much money. Even the people sitting high above were jealous. Ning Shu stared at the ancestral hall. Sooner or later, he would tear down this room. This thing was too dangerous. The ancestors underground would not blame him, right? After all, the future generations were in danger and the family could not be passed down. "Miss, let's go first." Lian Xiao touched her arm. It felt gloomy even in the summer. Ning Shu nodded and turned to leave. Back in his courtyard, Ning Shu took out the printed invitation card, wrote an invitation card and handed it to Lian Xiao. "Send it to the Yin residence." Lian Xiao looked at the exquisite printed invitation card with a displeased expression. "Miss, why do you still want to interact with Miss Yin?" "Just do as I ask," Ning Shu said impatiently. "Also, get someone to keep an eye on the Yin residence. Be careful. The maid by Miss Yin's side is highly skilled in martial arts. Don't talk too much to avoid suffering." Ning Shu instructed. Lian Xiao acknowledged and went to send the invitation card. However, when she returned, her clothes were covered in dust. She ran to Ning Shu angrily with an aggrieved expression. "You were beaten up by Yi Qing's maid, Hong Ling, was your attitude bad?" Ning Shu looked at Lian Xiao and said without raising her head. "She was busy with her embroidery. It's that Hong Ling who threw me out of the Yin family without any explanation. Her Yin family is just a small official and yet she threw me out. This is a slap to your face." Lian Xiao was so angry that she stomped her feet. Ning Shu put down her embroidery and poured a cup of tea. Go and freshen up. Don't act pitiful in front of me. Did Miss Yin accept the invitation card? Miss, this servant was really thrown out by that red silk. Miss, this servant feels so shameful and has lost the face of Marquis Xian Ping's residence. Lian Xiao saw that Ning Shu was unmoved and was so angry that her face turned red. Ning Shu nodded. You deliberately provoked Hong Ling. It would be strange if Hong Ling didn't throw you out. Hong Ling is Prince Xian's residence's subordinate. Why would he care about a maid from Marquis Xian Ping's residence? I knew you would get beaten up. Lian Xiao, miss, then why did you ask me to go? I don't want to. Lian Xiao felt extremely wronged. Alright, I know that you feel wronged. Go and freshen up. Oh right, when you were thrown out, what was Miss Yin's expression? Lian Xiao thought for a moment, this servant did not notice, but she stopped it. Ning Shu fell into deep thought. Young miss, the Yin family looks down on us. To think that young miss even sent a gold-colored floral invitation card in exchange for such treatment. Young miss, alright, you lass, go wash up. You've suffered. Lian Xiao hurriedly said, if the master is humiliated, the servant will die. I am fine, but the one who is humiliated is you, Mississippi. Ning Shu put down his teacup. These are all within my expectations. There's nothing humiliating about it. I know what I'm doing. Lian Xiao did not say anything else and went to wash up. Ning Shu stood up and stretched his body, preparing to walk around the courtyard. As he walked around, he saw Gu Fanlu's manservant. This manservant had hurriedly returned home to report the news when Gu Fanlu fell ill. Now that he had returned, it meant that the Gu family had arrived. Ning Shu thought for a while and went to old Madam's courtyard to massage old Madam's shoulders. There was an old mama guarding the entrance of the courtyard. When she saw Ning Shu, she bowed and said, Eldest miss, old Madam has guests now. Ning Shu did not say much and turned to leave. It was probably the Gu family's guests, so they had to pay a visit to their elders. Ning Shu sat in the pavilion to enjoy the cool air. Lian Xiao fanned Ning Shu and poured tea for him. Ning Shu saw a few people coming out of old Madam's courtyard. The next day, the Gu family took the seriously ill Gu Fanlu and left. Ning Shu went to look for Marquis Xian Ping. Marquis Xian Ping was practicing his calligraphy. Seeing Ning Shu put down his brush, Ning Shu asked, Is it easy to imitate my handwriting? Ning Shu glanced at the paper on the table. Marquis Xian Ping's handwriting was neat and steady without any special characteristics. It was easy to imitate, but it was also difficult to imitate, because it was too common and did not have a strong personal style. Ning Shu said, whether it is similar or not depends on what the person thinks. Marquis Xian Ping took a sip of tea and looked at his own handwriting. Father, cousin has left. Ning Shu said. Cousin once told me to lead the way to the ancestral hall. The ancestral hall. Marquis Xian Ping's expression did not change. That child fell ill in Marquis Xian Ping's residence. It's our fault for not taking good care of her. If there is nothing else, go out. I am practicing my handwriting again. I have not written for a long time and am rusty. Marquis Xian Ping picked up his brush and said lightly. Ning Shu originally wanted to talk about Marquis Xian Ping's business, but she saw that Marquis Xian Ping did not want her to interfere in external affairs. Ning Shu did not believe that Marquis Xian Ping would just let it go. Ning Shu thought for a while and said, Father, our ancestral hall is very eye-catching and heart-wrenching. Marquis Xian Ping held his brush and did not pause. If there is nothing else, help your mother to manage the inner courtyard and the inner courtyard. There are many eyes in the inner courtyard. It is not easy to manage the inner courtyard. Marquis Xian Ping glanced at Ning Shu. Ning Shu bowed and left the study. Marquis Xian Ping knew that if she said too much, it would be annoying. Ever since Taizu ascended the throne, Marquis Xian Ping's residence must have its own survival manual. Marquis Xian Ping did not look like someone who would be fine after being spat on and wiped clean. When Ning Shu left the study, he closed the door behind him. Ning Shu and Yi Qing agreed to meet at the tea house 2 days later. Ning Shu arrived at the tea house early and Yi Qing was already in the private room of the restaurant. Yi Qing arrived earlier than her. Yi Qing bowed to Ning Shu. "Miss Su." Ning Shu returned the greeting. "Miss Yin, I am late." "No, I'm the one who came early." Yi Qing glanced at Lian Xiao who was beside Ning Shu and said, "My servant girl was disobedient and hurt Miss Lian Xiao. I apologize to Miss Su." Ning Shu glanced at the unruly Hong Ling who was glaring at him covetously and said indifferently, "I am clear about your difficulties. Why would I force something that you cannot control onto you?" Hong Ling was Zhuo Charon's man and was ordered to protect Yi Qing. However, it did not mean that he would obey Yi Qing. When Yi Qing heard Ning Shu's words, she was filled with emotions. Hong Ling was always by her side to protect her and would say, "Heir apparent said, heir apparent said." Yi Qing felt that Hong Ling did not think highly of her. She was only the daughter of a small official while Zhuo Charan was Prince Xian's son and the emperor's favorite nephew. Hong Ling looked at her with a scrutinizing gaze, as if trying to see if there was anything about her that was worthy of Zhuo Charan. "Thank you for your magnanimity, Miss Su." "I thank you on behalf of Hong Ling," Yi Qing said politely and asked the waiter to order tea and snacks. Ning Shu smiled and said, "I have something to tell you. It is not easy for us to come out. Let these girls go out for a walk." Chapter 1606. Lian Xiao, who was beside Ning Shu, was very obedient. She took Yi Qing's maid and went shopping, but Hong Ling remained in the room like a wooden stake. Hong Ling hugged his sword and did not move. Yi Qing was a little embarrassed and said to Hong Ling, "You go out first, I want to talk to Miss Su." "Miss, this servant's responsibility is to protect Miss at all times. This way, I will not let down His Highness's instructions." Hong Ling looked at Ning Shu warily. Ning Shu calmly drank his tea, ignoring Hong Ling's sharp gaze. Yi Qing took a deep breath, "Please go out, please." "Miss, this servant is under His Highness's orders to protect Mississippi. Miss should not be with." Hong Ling looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu put down his teacup, his finger tapping the table. "Oh, His Highness thinks that I want to harm Miss Yin." Hong Ling did not speak, but his expression was obvious. Ning Shu smiled at Yi Qing, "Since we met, what have I done to you?" Yi Qing felt that she had never been so embarrassed, her expression changed. Ning Shu adjusted his sleeves. "Actually, it's not a big deal. I am here to ask you something on behalf of Marquis Xuanping's residence." Yi Qing nodded, "Please ask." Ning Shu said, "I just want to know how the war is going in Hanyang. There's still no news from Hanyang. I guess the Crown Prince is very good to you, so he must have written to you. Did he mention the current situation?" Before Yi Qing could speak, Hong Ling spoke first. "His Highness did not send a letter to Mississippi. We also do not know the current situation of the war." Ning Shu smiled faintly and said with some regret, "Then forget it. My father was still preparing the provisions for the army. Now that we don't know the situation, maybe he is already on his way back. Then forget it." Hong Ling's expression froze, he did not know what to say. Yi Qing wanted to laugh. Ning Shu stood up, "Thank you for coming to the banquet today. I will take my leave first, do as you wish." Yi Qing stood up and bowed, His Highness did write me a letter. The situation seems to be a little unexpected. The riot seems to have spread. Mississippi, Hong Ling's voice was a little fierce, with a murderous aura. He shouted at Yi Qing, "How can you say such things so easily? His Highness is fighting a bloody battle." Hong Ling was just short of saying that Yi Qing stabbed him in the back. Ning Shu was a little surprised as she said, "Your attitude really makes me surprised. Miss Yin is, after all, the young lady of the Guan family. You shouldn't treat her like this. Mississippi Su, His Highness His Highness. His Highness His Highness. His Highness and you. Is His Highness and you." Hong Ling was a talent in the dark department. He was unhappy that he was sent to protect an official's daughter. In the end, this housekeeper's daughter did not know what was good for her and simply stepped on the heir's face. This Miss Yin did not prioritize the interest of His Highness, and she could not do anything for His Highness. She even dragged him down. Hong Ling could keenly sense that Su Zhiru of the Marquis Xian Ping estate had bad intentions. Hong Ling was very anxious. Ma's. Yin Qing was suppressed by Hong Ling's aura. She was also unhappy. "I asked you to follow me. Do you think I want to let you follow me?" The atmosphere was quite tense. Ning Shu covered his mouth and laughed. His voice was pleasant. He said to Yin Qing, "Don't quarrel because of an outsider like me. Okay, I have to go back and tell my father about the situation." Ning Shu looked at Yin Qing, "Thank you for telling me, Mississippi." Yin Qing bowed lightly, "It's okay. Everyone is responsible for the rise and fall of the world. His Highness cares about you. That's why he sent a secret guard to protect you." "Many women want this treatment," Ning Shu said. Yin Qing said directly in front of Hong Ling, "Not every woman wants this treatment." Ning Shu thought for a moment and said, "I think Miss Yin has the absolute confidence and ability to ask for freedom. Ordinary women will only be happy when they encounter this kind of thing. No one wants to have someone following them." Ning Shu smiled and turned to leave. Hong Ling immediately said to Yin Qing, "Miss, you can't have any contact with Su Zhiru. She's trying to drive a wedge between you and His Highness. His Highness loves you deeply. You can't be provoked by others." Hong Ling was worried that Miss would have a bad impression of His Highness because of him. Yi Qing turned to look at Hong Ling, "Of course I know what Miss Su is thinking. But she's right about one thing. I have the absolute confidence and ability to ask for freedom." Yi Qing took out a gun and pointed it at Hong Ling's forehead. Hong Ling didn't recognize this thing, but he felt that it was a very dangerous thing. "Miss, you." Hong Ling's expression changed, "Miss, I'm His Highness's man." Yi Qing pursed her lips and said, "I've had enough of you. Do you know that?" Yi Qing fired and hit Hong Ling's thigh. Hong Ling immediately knelt down and covered his wound. His face was pale and he was sweating. "Miss, you," Hong Ling was really shocked, "Mississippi, you follow me every day. I can't even do my own things." Yi Qing hadn't seen the army in her manner for a long time. She didn't know how they were doing now. She had to control the army and get rid of those who had ulterior motives. This Hong Ling followed her everywhere. She was really a hindrance. She couldn't stand it. She kept saying that His Highness was doing her a favor and that it was her honor. Yin Qing was annoyed. "Help her back," Yi Qing's two personal maids said. Hong Ling felt sorry for her master and wanted to run away. Yi Qing shot Hong Ling's other leg. Hong Ling fell to the ground and was held down by the two maids. "Yi Qing, you have to think carefully. If you do this, His Highness won't let you off when he comes back. His love for you is in vain." Hong Ling's face was as white as paper and he was sweating profusely. He was held down by the two maids and his legs were limp. Yin Qing said faintly, "I didn't kill you. What do I have to be afraid of? I'm here to see Miss Su today." Yi Qing pursed her lips, "You had a conflict with the Su family." Ning Shu stood at the corner and watched as Hong Ling was pulled into the carriage. Hong Ling would not live past tomorrow. The reason why Hong Ling was still alive was because Yin Qing wanted some people to see him. She was afraid that she would become a suspect for killing Hong Ling and that His Highness would fight with Marquis Xian Ping's residence. Yin Qing finally exploded. "Miss, what happened to Hong Ling with eyes on his head?" Lien Qiao saw the blood on the ground and couldn't help but ask. Even though Lien Qiao didn't like Hong Ling, she was still afraid that something like this happened. Ning Shu said to Lien Qiao, "You go back first. I still have to walk around." Miss, I'll follow you," Lien Qiao swallowed and said. Chapter 1607. Ning Shu tried her best to persuade Lien Qiao to wander around and wait for her at the restaurant. Ning Shu followed behind Yi Qing's carriage. Yi Qing, who was in the carriage, tied the red silk around the wound to prevent it from bleeding too much and dripping everywhere. The carriage went straight out of the city to a manor in the suburbs. It was a small manor and did not attract attention. Hong Ling was pulled down from the carriage. Yi Qing straightened her back and pointed the gun at Hong Ling. Hong Ling knew that this thing was powerful. He supported himself with his hands and kept retreating. He said painfully, "Miss Yin, think carefully. If you kill me, will you and the heir still have a future?" Yin Qing said calmly, "I don't know if there will be a future, but who will care about a dead person? If Shuo Cheiran knows about your attitude towards me, I'm afraid that he will kill you personally. Do you know why I'm so confident? It's because of this thing in my hand." Yin Qing closed her eyes and pulled the trigger, shooting Hong Ling in the heart. The gun was equipped with a silencer. Even the birds in the forest were not startled by the shot. "Find a place to bury it." Yi Qing's voice was trembling. In a lawful society, she was a righteous police officer. But here, she had to shoot someone. But Yin Qing had to do this because someone in the manor reported that someone in the army had betrayed them and ran away with the gun. If one day these people who ran away made a big deal about the gun, it would be terrible. An ordinary man's wealth would arouse the envy of others. The entire Yin family would be finished. These things could not be made in this era. Yi Qing was afraid that she would be caught and questioned about how these things came about. How were they made? Her jade bracelet was gone. Her supplies were gone. She still had to rely on these things to survive. Yin Qing was afraid that the gun she hid would be discovered. But Hong Ling was by her side every day. She could not get away. Today's meeting with Miss Su could push Hong Ling's death to the Su family. Yi Qing did not want to fall out with Shuo Cheiran. She could only do things in a roundabout way. Yin Qing felt that fate was not in her control. Ning Shu squatted between the branches of a tree and watched what was happening below. Yi Qing and the two girls entered the manor. Ning Shu followed behind them. Ning Shu kept his attention on Yi Qing. When Yi Qing arrived at the manor, she first gathered her army. There were men and women in the army, and they were of different ages. They were dressed in coarse hemp clothing and had obviously returned from working in the fields. When they saw Yin Qing, they all saluted her. There were about 100 people, and they were lined up neatly. It was obvious that they were trained according to modern methods. Yin Qing gave these people a warning, saying that if they had any thoughts of betrayal, they should get out of the manor. Yi Qing took out her gun and shot a few people to death. These people had been sneaking around all the time. There were people with ulterior motives in the team, but there were also people who were loyal to her. After Yi Qing killed someone, these people dragged the body away. Yi Qing's ferocious methods shocked some people. They looked at Yi Qing with reverence and fear. Yi Qing's hands behind her back trembled again. This was not a modern society with a complete legal system. Once these weapons were discovered, they would most likely die. Therefore, they had to be suppressed with blood. If she had a choice, she would rather not take out these things. If the bracelet was still there, she could take out a more powerful weapon and sweep the world. But the bracelet was gone. Where did the bracelet go? Why did it suddenly disappear? Or did the bracelet abandon him and go away? Yi Qing could not calm down. This thing was a threat to her whether she handed it over or not. After giving her people a warning, I Ching asked her two maids to make some food. She went to a remote cave in the back of the mountain. Ning Shu followed I Ching and hid outside the cave. I Ching stayed inside for a long time before coming out. When I Ching was far away, Ning Shu bent down and walked into the cave, releasing his spiritual power. There were traces of soil being refurbished in the innermost part of the cave. Ning Shu squatted down, dug up the soil with his hands, and dug up animal fur. The fur was wrapped in guns. Obviously, they were afraid that the moisture in the soil would make the guns and bullets damp. Ning Shu dug hard and dug out enough guns to assemble an army of about 500 people, not counting the bullets. Ning Shu stopped digging and covered it with soil. Then, he stepped out and stepped on the footprints he had made when he came in. He stepped backward and smoothed out the footprints with one step. Out of the cave, Ning Shu mobilized his qi and quickly shuttled through the forest. Then, he returned to the city. Lian Qiao stretched her neck and waited for Ning Shu. Seeing that Ning Shu had finally come to the restaurant, she looked at Ning Shu with tears in her eyes. "Miss, what did you do? If you didn't come back, I would have gone back to find Madam and apologize with my death." Lian Qiao was about to cry. "I just strolled around." "What did you buy?" Ning Shu changed the topic. Ning Shu had just returned to Marquis Xuanping's residence when he was called over by Madame Ronghua. Madame Ronghua's face was cold. "Did you hurt the Yin family's Mrs. Maid? Do you know that the whole capital has spread the news that you were angry about the broken engagement and went to look for the Yin family's miss, got into an argument, and even hurt her maid?" Madame Ronghua was exasperated. "The Yin family is nothing. You are the daughter of Marquis Xuanping's residence. Why do you have to use porcelain against a stubborn stone?" Ning Shu was not surprised by this result. He said to Madame Ronghua, "Mother, don't worry about it. These people will talk about it for 3 days at most. Then, they will talk about new gossip. Zhu Ru, you represent the image of the Su family's daughter. People will say that the Su family's style is not good. You are the one who broke off the engagement. I feel sorry for you and blame you for not living up to expectations." Ning Shu bowed. "Mother, I know." Madame Ronghua rubbed her eyebrows. "Don't go out for a while. Stay at home." Lian Qiao pouted. She wanted to say something several times but was stopped by Ning Shu. "Yes." Ning Shu bowed. He thought for a while and said, "Mother, I want to live in the manor for a while." Basically, every noble official's family had a manor. It was called a manor, but it was the land of the high officials and nobles. Then they hired people to work and produce grain and vegetables. Madame Ronghua was very angry. "I thought you were a smart girl. How could you do such a thing?" Ning Shu said, "When I went out, I did meet Miss Su in the tea house. As for the rumors, they were exaggerated by busybodies. The more they spread, the more outrageous they became. I was not careful enough. I want to live in the manor for a while." Madame Ronghua waved her hand. "It's up to you. If you need anything, just tell the housekeeper. Don't make yourself suffer. Go out for a while and come back, okay?" "Thank you, Mother." Ning Shu bowed and returned to his courtyard. "Miss, when did you hurt Miss Yin's maid? Miss didn't even touch her. How can you accuse her like this?" Lian Qiao wanted to explode on the spot. This was too much. Chapter 1608. Lian Qiao was full of grievances from being wronged. She looked like she wanted to chew I Ching alive. Ning Shu calmly took a sip of tea. "I gave her the opportunity. Fortunately, I also gained something." "Miss, what are you talking about?" Lian Qiao was angry and at a loss. "Nothing. Prepare some hot water for me to wash up." Ning Shu said to the blushing Lien Xiao, "You should use cold water to wash up. Calm down. Miss, aren't you angry?" Lien Xiao wanted to beat her chest. "I'm about to die from anger. I've never seen such a despicable person." Ning Shu indicated that there were still some unimaginable people that you haven't seen. "Don't be angry. It's not worth it if you get angry. Go prepare the water." Lien Xiao prepared the bath water for Ning Shu. After washing up, Ning Shu took out a piece of paper and a brush and started to practice writing. Ning Shu dipped the brush in ink and slowly practiced writing. Ning Shu's hand was very difficult because she was imitating someone's handwriting. Gu Fanlu's handwriting. Gu Fanlu's handwriting was elegant and graceful. Ning Shu had seen Gu Fanlu's handwriting in books. Her mind clearly displayed Gu Fanlu's handwriting. She needed to imitate it again and again. As Ning Shu practiced, she said to Lien Xiao, "Don't just stand there. Pack your things. We'll go to the manor tomorrow." "Miss, we're really going to the manor?" Lien Xiao looked at Ning Shu in shock. "Wasn't Miss just saying it?" Ning Shu moved her wrist. "Pack your things. We'll go to the manor tomorrow." She remembered that there was a manor in the Xianping Marquis residence that was slightly closer to the Yin manor. Even if it was slightly closer, it was still not far away. "Miss, the manor's condition is not good. You shouldn't go." Ning Shu did not even lift her head to practice. "You can stay at home. You don't have to go to the manor with me." "Miss, what are you saying? Wherever you go, this servant will follow." This servant's heart aches for Mississippi. Lien Xiao's loyalty was questioned and she was instantly enraged. Ning Shu sincerely hoped that Lien Xiao would not go. However, if Lien Xiao stayed at home, Madame Rome would probably find trouble with her. Thus, Lien Xiao did not dare to not go. "My daughter has already gone to the manor, and you, a personal maid, are actually enjoying life in the manor." After Lien Xiao had finished packing, Ning Shu was still practicing his calligraphy. After imitating for so long, her handwriting was somewhat similar to Gu Fanlu's, but it was very stiff and not natural at all. One look and one could tell that it was an imitation. Ning Shu practiced calligraphy until midnight. He stretched his wrists before going to bed. Early the next morning, the steward prepared a carriage and moved everything onto the carriage. Ning Shu, Madame of Ronghua, said, "I'll be back in a while." Madame Ronghua agreed with Ning Shu to avoid the limelight. She was a little afraid that Ning Shu would think too much. First, the engagement was broken off, and now, such a thing had happened. Ning Shu, Madame of Ronghua waved her hand. Madame of Ronghua's eyes were a little red. There were not many children who could accompany her. Her son and the concubine's sons had all gone to take care of the family business. Everyone had something to do. In the backyard of Marquis Xuanping's residence, there were only a few concubines and daughters. The men were all doing business. The carriage swayed. Ning Shu closed his eyes. Lien Xiao wanted to say something, but seeing Ning Shu like this, she closed her mouth. Lien Xiao felt that she really could not keep up with Mrs. Thoughts. She did not know what she was thinking. When they arrived at the manor, the person in charge of the manor led the tenant farmers to unload the things in the carriage and put them in the newly tidied room. Lien Xiao looked at the simple room. "Miss, let's go back. This is not a place where you can live. Not bad. This is the best house here. The other tenant farmers' houses were not even 1/10 as good as this one. Ning Shu came here to do something, so he could live anywhere." Ning Shu asked the servants in the manor to buy a box. It was the kind of big box. The person in charge of the manor was a servant of Marquis Xuanping's household. He was specially sent to manage the manor. After resting for a while, Ning Shu took out a brush and ink to practice writing. In short, he wanted to imitate the words as soon as possible. At first glance, people who knew Gu Fanlu would think that Gu Fanlu was the one who had written it. The servants of the manor moved a few big boxes. Ning Shu asked them to put the boxes in the courtyard of the house. Lien Qiao asked, "Miss, what do you want these boxes for?" "Guess. If you guess correctly, you will have candy to eat." Lien Qiao, Ning Shu took out a piece of paper, dipped it in ink and started to write the letter. The beginning of the letter was addressed as Your Highness the Crown Prince. Ning Shu felt that Gu Fanlu was working for Zhuo Qiran. "This time, I will let you take the credit. There is no need to thank me." Ning Shu wrote a few pages of the letter. When the ink was dry, Ning Shu folded the letter and put it in an envelope. He then wrote, "To Your Highness the Crown Prince" on the envelope. "Miss, who are you writing to?" Lien Qiao asked again. "Go boil some water and make some tea. Are you not thirsty?" Ning Shu kept the letter. "Lien Qiao, I totally don't understand. What is master doing?" The food in the manor was not as exquisite as in the marquis residence. During the meal, Lien Qiao was chattering non-stop about how Miss could suffer like this. "Eat. The taste is quite good. Whether it looks good or not, it will be the same in your stomach," Ning Shu said to the picky Lien Qiao. When the sky turned dark and everyone in the manor was asleep, Ning Shu carried a box in each hand and went to the Yin Manor. This place was a little far from the Yin Manor. Under the moonlight, Ning Shu ran with all his might for more than 2 hours before he reached the entrance of the cave. Ning Shu pulled the box in and dug up the soil. He first filled the box with bullets and then put the gun into the box. After filling both boxes, he ran back with one box in each hand. On the way back, Ning Shu seemed to be struggling. After all, the 2 big boxes were filled with iron lumps and were very heavy. Back at the manor, Ning Shu put down the boxes and quickly shook his hands. Then, he carried the 2 empty boxes to move the guns. Ning Shu ran back and forth a few times and filled 7 to 8 boxes. He did not sleep for the whole night. On the last trip, Ning Shu buried the boxes and erased his footprints. Yin Qin was a police officer and was very good at detective work. Before everyone woke up, Ning Shu stuffed the boxes into the horse carriage. As the boxes were too big, he could not stuff too many boxes in one go. Ning Shu locked the boxes in the courtyard and then rode the horse and left the manor. Ning Shu first moved the 2 boxes of bullets. When he reached the city gate was not opened yet. Ning Shu went around the other side of the city and arrived at the moat. Ning Shu moved the boxes down, opened them and poured the 2 boxes of bullets into the moat. Without bullets, those guns were just scrap metal. Of course, Ning Shu felt that he was kind and would also leave a box of bullets for Zhuo Qiran, although it was not much. But it was enough for him. A box was a little too much, it was better to leave half a box. After pouring the bullets, Ning Shu found the best escort company to send the guns and remaining bullets to Zhuo Qiran. Sending them to the Hanyang area at the fastest speed cost Ning Shu a lot of bodyguard fees. This business was really a loss. Fortunately, Marquis Xian Ping Fu had some money. Before leaving, he shamelessly asked for some money from Madame Ronghua. Chapter 1609. After settling the matter, Ning Shu drove the carriage back leisurely. Lien Qiao had just woken up. When she saw Ning Shu, she hurriedly asked, "Miss, where did you go?" "The morning air is good, so I went to walk the horse." Ning Shu got off the carriage, tied the horse and washed her hands. The servants of the manor sent breakfast. It was not very sumptuous, but there were 2 refreshing side dishes. "Miss, when are we going back?" Lien Qiao asked Ning Shu. Ning Shu said, "I think you should take some medicine to control your emotions." She had been clamoring to go back every day. She would have to stay for at least 7 or 8 days. After that, there should be news from the Hanyang area. Lien Qiao. After breakfast, Ning Shu strolled around the manor. The manor was quite big. There were fruit trees, vegetable gardens, chickens and ducks. There were also dogs running around. There were fish swimming in the small stream. There were also small gray shrimps. There were tenant farmers weeding in the fields. They carried hoes and walked around the edge of the fields. They stepped on the grassy edges of the fields. The wild flowers and weeds swayed with the wind. It was a peaceful rural scene. Staying in such a place was more comfortable than staying in the Marquis's residence. There was no need to bow so often. She couldn't find such a good environment in the modern plane, nor did she have such good air. Ning Shu took a deep breath and felt very comfortable. Lunch was pancakes. The pancakes were very chewy. After eating, Ning Shu took out the embroidery and embroidered the word show. There was no ice in the countryside, but Lian Xiao was very hot. She held 2 fans, one for Ning Shu and the other for herself. Seeing that Ning Shu was not sweating, she asked, "Miss, are you hot?" "Yes," Ning Shu said without raising her head. Lian Xiao wanted to say, "You don't look hot at all. You're fresh and you're not sweating." Under Lian Xiao's anxious gaze, Ning Shu finally decided to go back. Lian Xiao was about to cry when she got into the carriage. They were finally going back. Ning Shu stayed in the manor for 10 days. When he returned, Madame Ronghua saw Ning Shu and said that Ning Shu was dark. Ning Shu drank a bowl of iced sour plum soup and asked Madame Ronghua, "Mother, what happened?" "I just went to see grandmother and she didn't look good." "Your cousin passed away. The Gu family said that your cousin fell sick at the Su family's house. In the end, he passed away. Your great-aunt couldn't accept it." Madame Ronghua frowned and said, "Your cousin is so young and his body is so weak. Why did he go?" Ning Shu's pupils constricted. This matter was most likely done by Marquis Xian Ping, who directly caused Gu Fanlu to fall ill and die. Ning Shu's medicine would only make Gu Fanlu's body weak, but it would not kill Gu Fanlu. "The Gu clan is here to cause trouble?" Ning Shu asked. "Yes, but they are not in the right. After all, she didn't die in our house." Madame Ronghua said indifferently, "But we can't be relatives anymore." Even if they were not close, Gu Fanlu had never thought that they were relatives after doing such a thing. Ning Shu left Madame Ronghua's courtyard and said to Lian Xiao, "Go out and find out what happened recently." "Yes." When Lian Xiao came back, she did not look good. Ning Shu said, "Now the whole capital is talking about His Highness the Crown Prince." Ning Shu asked calmly, "What are they talking about?" "They are talking about how the Crown Prince is the god of war with a magical weapon. It didn't take long for him to suppress the riot." "Miss, I heard that the magical weapon is very powerful. It doesn't need to be close to the target. It can kill people from a distance and it can't be seen." Lian Xiao said mysteriously, "Miss, what kind of magical weapon is it?" Ning Shu said unhappily, "How would I know?" Now the people were talking about Chua Cheran as if he was an immortal who came down to earth and knew magic. He could kill people just by holding a black object in his hand. In short, the more the rumors spread, the more ridiculous it became. Ning Shu smiled in her heart. I Ching and Chua Cheran should thank her. Chua Cheran didn't need to be mentioned. With these magical weapons, he was invincible. He could even rebel. Chua Cheran was probably being watched by the whole world now. The magical weapon in his hand was also being watched by the emperor. I Ching should also thank her. To be honest, I Ching's current situation was like riding a tiger and it was hard to get off. There were insufficient supplies. If these things were exposed, it would be like training a private army. This was a matter of life and death. If they were discovered, they would need to protect themselves. When they ran out of bullets, they could only be at the mercy of others. Now they were given to Chua Cheran using Gu Fanlu's name. Now Gu Fanlu was dead. Where did these things come from? Zhuo Qiran should ask the ghost. In the letter to Zhuo Qiran, Ning Shu also wrote in detail how to use these guns. Ning Shu felt that she was very considerate. If Yin Qing was smart enough, she should have distanced herself from these things. The gun that was given to Zhuo Qiran before was also given by someone else. Yi Qing was able to protect herself in the plot because she could continuously take out more powerful firearms. Military binoculars, bombs, tanks. To a certain extent, they were invincible. No one dared to provoke them. But now that the bridge in the middle was gone, she couldn't take out more powerful firearms that could intimidate people. It caused such an awkward situation. She couldn't go up or down. Ning Shu hummed a little tune. She reckoned that the emperor was also interested in this magical weapon and was afraid of it. After suppressing the riot this time, Zhuo Qiran also had a lot of bullets left. After all, there was only a small half box of bullets and it would be used up soon. Especially those who had never touched a gun before. It wasn't that they would become sharpshooters once they touched a gun. They would definitely waste bullets. In short, these weapons actually looked awesome, but in fact, they weren't that good. Without bullets, they were useless. Moreover, they attracted fear and covetousness for no reason. It seemed that Zhuo Qiran didn't control himself and used this thing. She was a woman in the backyard. She couldn't fight with Zhuo Qiran face to face. She could only take a roundabout way and borrow strength from all sides. Compared to Ning Shu's relaxed and comfortable feeling, Yi Qing seemed a little flustered. Ever since she heard that Zhuo Qiran's army used magical weapons. As soon as she heard about magical weapons, Yi Qing's heart sank. Her intuition told her that it was a gun, but she only gave Zhuo Qiran a gun for self-defense. How could there be so many? Yi Qing rushed to the manor in a panic. She dug up the soil in the cave and saw that only fur was left. The fur and the guns wrapped in withered grass were gone. Not even a gun was left. Yi Qing had always felt that she hid things very well. How could they be discovered? Was it someone from the manor? Or was it someone around Zhuo Qiran who followed her to this place? So Zhuo Qiran approached her for these guns. Then when did Zhuo Qiran know that she had these things? And her bracelet, was it also in Zhuo Qiran's hands? Chapter 1610. Yi Qing was a police officer and had the instincts of a police officer. She would habitually be suspicious of everything. Yi Qing now suspected that her bracelet had fallen into the lotus pond in Fu Chu Pavilion. She kept it instead of giving it to her. Yi Qing also didn't think about it. What was the use of a bracelet for a man like Zhuo Qiran? Was he wearing it for fun? Now Yi Qing's heart was in a mess. She was afraid that this matter would bring disaster to the Yin family. Yi Qing understood the ancient law. The central government was highly centralized and the emperor had the power to kill. He especially liked to implicate people and wipe them all out. Human trafficking was legal. Although the women in the families who committed the crime didn't have to die, their fate was miserable. Going to court was just bullshit. Yin Qing regretted the army very much. If she had a choice, she would rather not transmigrate. She would live a comfortable life in the modern world. She could work and earn money and go wherever she wanted. In ancient times, one had to rely on their legs to walk and shout to communicate. Women had a low status and men had absolute control over women. Yi Qing felt that transmigration was not so beautiful. Even if there was a handsome man, it couldn't make up for Yi Qing's desire to die. But she didn't dare to die. What if she really died? Yi Qing, what can I do? I'm also very desperate. There were still more than 100 people waiting for her to deal with. Thinking of these people, Yi Qing had a headache again. There were so many people if she killed them. But if she let them go, they might spread rumors. But if she raised them, there were so many mouths to feed. The Yin family was a small family. Yin Guanyuan was just a small official with no real power in the Ministry of Rights. It was very difficult for Yi Qing to support so many people. She was in a dilemma and surrounded by enemies. Yi Qing really wanted to pull her hair out. Why did she establish such an army? It was better to carry the cannon when she encountered trouble. Why did she lose her bracelet? Her heart was so tired. Fate really didn't control people at all. Yi Qing thought that she was just an ordinary woman in the backyard now. Yi Qing was almost trembling in fear as she waited for Zhuo Charon's triumphant return. How could she explain the gun problem? How could she explain Hong Ling's death? Could she really push the blame to Su Zhiru? At that time, Hong Ling didn't die. She didn't kill Hong Ling directly because she was afraid that the Su family would fall out. If she didn't recuperate well, Hong Ling would die. Yi Qing wiped her face. Whether she lived or died or not, she could only resign herself to fate. How miserable, Ning Shu asked Lian Xiao to get the lunchbox and wrapped the gun with a handkerchief. When Lian Xiao came back with the lunchbox, Ning Shu placed the gun into the lunchbox. Let's go to the study. Ning Shu walked towards the study room with small, quick steps. Lian Xiao followed behind her and asked while carrying the food box, "Miss, are you not going to prepare some food for master?" Was it really okay to carry an empty lunchbox there? This is quite edible. What had Marquis Xian Ping not eaten before? This was what Marquis Xian Ping wanted to see. At the door of the study, Ning Shu was stopped. The servant said, "Miss, the master is busy. You should go back." Really busy? She guessed that Marquis Xian Ping was annoyed by her. Ning Shu was not annoyed. He said to the servant, "Give this food box to father." Lian Xiao hurriedly stuffed the food box into the manservant's hands. The manservant's face turned ugly. "Mississippi, go ahead, I promise I won't blame you." Ning Shu stood still, waiting for the servant to send him in. The servant had no choice but to carry the lunchbox in. After a while, the servant came out. Ning Shu said, "Miss, the master asked you to go in." Ning Shu walked into the study room. Marquis Xian Ping was holding the gun with both hands and looking at it carefully. "Where did you get this?" Ning Shu asked Marquis Xian Ping. "Daughter stayed in the manor for a few days. I heard the people in the manor talking about the crown prince's magical weapon. Daughter spent money to get it." Ning Shu lied without changing her expression. Marquis Xian Ping looked at the gun. "How did you do it?" Marquis Xian Ping was a businessman. When they saw this kind of thing, the first thing they thought about was how it was done and whether it could be done to make money. Ning Shu could only say that it was impossible. Some things were too delicate and could not be made in this era. The technology was not good, the tools were not good, and the economy could not support the country to make this kind of thing. You should give up. Who is the person you found to be able to get this thing? I heard that the crown prince treasures this thing a lot. The rioters wanted to get the gun but were not able to get it. Marquis Xian Ping's hand was on the thumb ring. Ping de, a fake sound rang out, scaring him so much that he threw the gun away. "Master, what happened?" The servant asked outside the door. Hearing the commotion in the room, he wanted to rush in. Marquis Xian Ping coughed. His voice had an undetectable tremble. "Nothing." Ning Shu bent down to pick up the gun on the ground. He put the bullet in the gun and pulled the bolt. Then, he aimed at the vase at the foot of the wall and pulled the trigger. With a pang, the vase exploded and the bullet was embedded in the wall. Marquis Xian Ping's face was pale as he glanced at Ning Shu. Ning Shu placed the gun in front of Marquis Xian Ping and said, "Father, just this is not enough. You also need this little thing. Just like how it's useless to have a bow without arrows." Ning Shu placed a bullet on the table. Marquis Xian Ping naturally saw the power of this thing. The most important thing was that it was too fast. Marquis Xianping held the bullet. The bullet was a bit heavy. He muttered, "How is this made?" Ning Shu could only say that with his current level, it was very difficult to make. The bullet was made up of a bullet head, a cartridge case, and gunpowder. The bullet head was usually made of lead alloy. The surface was covered with a layer of brass. Pulling the trigger would cause the firing pin in the gun to hit the fuse at the bottom of the cartridge case, causing the gunpowder to explode. "How do you know how to use it?" Marquis Xianping looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu smiled and said, "Father, your daughter has spent a lot of money. If you don't even know how to use it, that won't do." She had spent a lot of money to find an escort company to deliver the package. "Father, you should let His Majesty see such a godly weapon." Ning Shu said. "How do I use this?" Marquis Xianping asked. Ning Shu began to teach Marquis Xianping how to use the gun, how to load the bullet, and other things to take note of. Since he was going to present it to His Majesty, he had to let His Majesty know how to use this thing and how powerful it was. Perhaps men were a bit self-taught when it came to showing off. Out of an instinctive desire for power, Marquis Xianping quickly learned how to shoot, and his accuracy was not bad. "This thing is not bad. Do you have more?" Marquis Xianping touched the gun and did not raise his head as he asked Ning Shu. Ning Shu, "No." "Why don't you get 2 more?" Marquis Xianping said unhappily. If this gun was really sent to His Majesty, he would have no more. Ning Shu said lightly, "Father, it was not easy for your daughter to get one. Plus, I don't have money." Marquis Xianping looked at the gun over and over again. He sighed. His face was filled with reluctance as if he was caressing a lover. Chapter 1611. Ning Shu had never seen Marquis Xianping like this. His face was filled with infatuation, which gave Ning Shu goosebumps. "Father!" Ning Shu shouted. Marquis Xianping put away his gun. "I got it." No matter how reluctant Marquis Xianping's residence was, now was the best time to give Wuxia ran some eye drops. In the past, Wuxia had hit him when he was down. This time, he had to repay him. Wuxia ran held such a powerful weapon in his hand. He didn't believe that His Majesty didn't have a trace of that in his heart. But this thing is so powerful. What if? What if it shoots at Marquis Xianping's residence? How many people can survive? Ning Shu touched Marquis Xianping's concerns. He looked at the bullet casings on the ground and said, "These bullets are single-use items. Once used, there will be one less. The Crown Prince is suppressing the riot, so he must not have many bullets left." Ning Shu let Lian Qiao carry the food box away. The next day, Marquis Xianping took out his gun and demonstrated the destructive power of the gun. The emperor was so shocked that he almost jumped out of his dragon throne. "This thing is so powerful. As long as you can pull the thumb ring, you can kill people. Even a 7 or 8-year-old child can kill people." When the emperor thought that Wuxia had this thing in his hands, his expression changed. In any case, Marquis Xianping succeeded in using the eye drops, but the price was that his gun was confiscated. Marquis Xianping was very disappointed. Ning Shu looked at Marquis Xianping's expression and knew that his gun was gone. As long as the guns were in the emperor's hands, the emperor would definitely be afraid of Wuxia. Accompanying the monarch was like accompanying a tiger. The emperor liked Wuxia before, but now that Wuxia threatened his throne, he might not like him so much anymore. Ning Shu smiled and waited for Wuxia's triumphant return. "Who did you get this from?" Marquis Xianping Ning Shu asked. Ning Shu rolled his eyes and said, "It's a down-and-out Jianghu man. My daughter gave him money and he helped me steal it. Now I can't find him." Marquis Xianping stared at Ning Shu. "You don't speak the truth. If you have nothing to do, you should learn the precepts for women from your mother. Ning Shu bowed and turned to leave. Learn your sister's precepts. Xian Ping Ho looked at Ning Shu's proud back and sighed. It was a pity that he wasn't his son. Zhuo Che had quelled the chaos in Hanyang and returned in triumph, but it was a little different from the welcome of the common people. The army could not enter the city, and the emperor directly ordered Zhuo Che Ran to be stationed outside the city. Moreover, he didn't even summon Zhuo Che. Instead, he made Zhuo Che wait. Originally, they had won the battle, but now they were being treated so coldly. It was really disheartening. Their morale surged, and they were filled with resentment. The emperor waited until it was about time before summoning Zhuo Cheran into the city. Zhuo Cheran was still alone. Zhuo Cheran only needed to think a little to realize that during the riot, he had no choice but to use the weapons that Gu Fanlu had sent over. He knew that this thing would arouse fear, because the power of this thing made even him feel abnormally fearful. Zhuo Cheran felt that this trip into the palace boded ill rather than well, so he brought a gun with him for self-defense. Zhuo Cheran arrived at the main hall. As expected, he saw the emperor's ugly expression. Zhuo Cheran knelt down and bowed. Imperial uncle, this nephew is back. The emperor said indifferently, it's good that you're back. It's time to reward you. Thank you for your grace, Imperial uncle. This is what this nephew should do. Zhuo Cheran said respectfully. The emperor's expression was indifferent. If I don't reward you, wouldn't the whole world say that I'm harsh and ungrateful? I'll become an unjust person and be laughed at by the world. Zhuo Cheran immediately kowtowed. Your Majesty, this subject definitely doesn't mean that. The sweat on Zhuo Cheran's forehead dripped onto the obsidian floor. The atmosphere was tense. The emperor took out a gun. Cheran, where did you get this? Forging weapons privately, Zhuo Cheran immediately said, Your Majesty, this subject didn't forge weapons privately. The emperor wanted to throw the gun heavily on the ground, but in the end, he didn't harden his heart and couldn't bear to do it. Then tell me, where did these things come from? The emperor said with a cold face. The person who could make such things was simply a talent. Zhuo Cheran had such a talent in his hands. What did Prince Xian residence want to do? Did Prince Xian residence have a lot of such weapons? Other than such weapons, there were other more powerful weapons. The more the emperor thought about it, the more alarmed he became. The gaze he looked at Zhuo Cheran became colder and colder. Zhuo Cheran felt unwell. He didn't know how to answer. Could it be that Gu Fanlu gave it to him? That would be dragging the Gu family into this. The Gu family was his secret chess piece. He couldn't say it out loud. Even if he directly said that Gu Fanlu gave it to him, why would Gu Fanlu give him these things? Zhuo Cheran felt that no matter how he explained, he would be stuck. How do you explain? The emperor held the gun tightly. Zhuo Cheran also touched his thigh. There was a gun hidden in his thigh. In short, the whole scene was very strange. It was clearly the era of cold weapons, but ancient people dressed in complicated ancient costumes were holding guns and facing each other. It should be more harmonious if they were holding swords. Capture the heir to the prison first and send the imperial guards to surround Prince Xian residence. The emperor ordered with a cold face. Zhuo Cheran clenched his fist and immediately said, Your Majesty, Prince Xian residence is innocent. Prince Xian residence forged weapons privately. Can you quibble? Zhuo Cheran, how should he explain? If they could really create such weapons, Prince Xian wouldn't have failed in the fight for the throne back then. He couldn't explain it. He couldn't explain it. Zhuo Cheran sighed and stood up. He said, Uncle Emperor, Prince Xian residence can't create such fine weapons. Why don't you believe it? Seeing Zhuo Cheran stand up and being so disrespectful, the emperor's face instantly turned black. He pointed his gun at Zhuo Ran. How dare you? Zhuo Ran also took out his gun and pointed it at the emperor's head. Zhuo Ran said, Uncle Emperor, let's bet on who can hit more accurately. How dare you? The emperor was so angry that his face turned red. His hand that was holding the gun kept trembling. On the contrary, Zhuo Ran's posture was graceful as he pointed his gun at the emperor. This was simply a great disrespect. Since it was already like this, Zhuo Ran pulled the trigger. The bullet flew out of the gun barrel and shot toward the emperor, who had a ferocious expression but was unable to dodge. With a bang, the emperor's head exploded with blood. He sat weakly on the dragon throne. He died with his eyes wide open and his expression ferocious. Help! Help! There's an assassin! There's an assassin! With the emperor dead, the entire palace was in chaos. The imperial guards surrounded Zhuo Ran. Zhuo Ran took out his gun and killed the guards who were charging toward him, successfully intimidating the others. Everyone looked at the gun in Zhuo Ran's hand in horror. The emperor is already dead. Who are you loyal to now? Do you want to be loyal to the dead? Do you want to go down and compensate the late emperor? You guys are really loyal. Zhuo Ran took a step forward and the imperial guards opened up a path. They were very afraid of the divine weapon in Zhuo Ran's hand. Chapter 16:12. The emperor was dead, and the bell tolled 3 times. The whole city could hear it. When Marquis Xianping heard the bell, the teacup in his hand dropped. The emperor has passed away. Marquis Xianping looked a little frightened. He remembered that today was the day His Majesty summoned Zhuo Ran. Could it be that Zhuo Ran had been killed? Marquis Xianping had an uneasy expression. He did not forget that Zhuo Ran was rather displeased with Marquis Xianping's estate. If Zhuo Ran ascended the throne, then it would be a disaster for Marquis Xianping's manor. Not long ago, he had used eye drops. Marquis Xianping wiped his face. Holy shit, why the hell did Zhuo dislike Marquis Xianping's estate so much? Ning Shu calmly took a sip of tea and said to the uneasy Marquis Xianping's residence, Father, what are you afraid of? Zhuo Ran will definitely kill the monarch. What I'm worried about is the invincible weapon in Zhuo Ran's hands. Xianping Marquis Fu and Zhuo Ran were in opposition. Xianping Marquis was the first to be unwilling for Zhuo Ran to ascend the throne. Ning Shu put down his teacup, straightened his long sleeves, and said, Father, these things are not as powerful as you think. Without bullets, they are just scrap iron. But who knows how many bullets there are? Since Prince Xian residence is able to create something like this, they must have a lot of bullets. Marquis Xianping's residence is in danger. Marquis Xianping's expression was ugly. It seems like we need to make some arrangements. I hope we can preserve the foundation of Marquis Xianping's residence. In essence, Marquis Xianping's estate was a merchant. Since they couldn't stay here anymore, they could only change locations. Prince Xian residence definitely can't make these bullets. Moreover, Zhuo Ran doesn't have many bullets in his hands. Ning Shu said with certainty, Father, please believe me. This thing is not a threat at all. How did you know? The Marquis of Xianping glanced sideways at Ning Shu. Ning Shu said, since we spent money, we must get the service we deserve. Let the Jianhu man check the number of bullets. That's why I asked you to enter the palace without worry. Zhuo Ran may not be able to ascend the throne. After all, there are so many princes. Ning Shu said, Father, what we need to do now is not to let the soldiers outside the city gate come in. They're afraid of scaring people with a pile of scrap iron. Are you sure? Marquis Xianping struggled. Ning Shu nodded. How could a traitor like him ascend the throne? How could he obtain the approval of the civil and military officials? The most important thing now is to close the city gates. Xian Pingho flung his sleeves and left. No matter what, he had to work hard. Ning Shu stood up and went to give the old madam a massage. Yi Qing stared in the direction of the palace. How did things develop to this point? That bracelet was an ominous item. He could take out modern things, such as pistols, tanks, all kinds of high-tech modern weapons, and some high-tech daily necessities, such as rice cookers, mobile phones, and so on. However, these things were completely useless in ancient times where there was no electricity. The only thing that was powerful was the firearms of that world. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have used this bracelet. Yi Qing clenched her fists, hoping that the chaos would end soon. Yi Qing didn't know whether she wanted Zhuo Ran to live or die. Everyone in the Yin family was trembling. Yi Qing suppressed the urge to rush to Zhuo Ran. She couldn't cause trouble for the Yin family. She had taken over Yi Qing's body and had to be responsible for her family. If she rushed over now and Zhuo Ran died, the entire Yin family would be implicated and executed. Yi Qing squatted on the ground, biting her cheeks. She wanted to go back, she wanted to go back. She didn't want to live in this era. Yi Qing's tears fell to the ground, splashing into water. The atmosphere in the capital was extremely solemn and tense. Every household had their doors tightly shut. Outside, there were footsteps and a chilling murderous aura. Everyone was in a state of panic. Ning Shu stayed in the courtyard, embroidering the word longevity. "Miss, why are you still in the mood to embroider?" Something like that happened outside. Lian Qiao said uneasily. "Can't I embroider?" Ning Shu asked back. "Something happened outside and I can't even embroider." "Lian Qiao, miss, you know what I mean. Aren't you afraid?" Lian Qiao couldn't help but ask. "How can you be so relaxed? Whether I'm nervous or not, there will be a result anyway. Why should I be nervous?" She had enough power to deal with what would happen next, so she wasn't nervous at all. Let's not talk about whether Zhuo Ran could become the emperor. Even if he did, she had a way to pull him down. So there was no need to be nervous. Ning Shu put down her embroidery, stretched her neck and poured a cup of tea. He took his time to drink it. Lian Qiao saw that Ning Shu was very calm and also became calm. Seeing that Ning Shu had finished her tea, she quickly poured another cup of tea for Ning Shu. "Miss, who do you think will ascend the throne in the end?" Lian Qiao couldn't help but ask. Ning Shu propped up her chin, her fingers tapping on the table. "If the crown prince and the other princes can unite, it won't be a problem to deal with Zhuo Ran. After all, many ants can bite an elephant to death." But what?" Lian Qiao quickly asked. Ning Shu's expression was languid, but Zhuo Ran was a person doted on by the heavens. Maybe the princes didn't defeat Zhuo Ran because they had their own selfish motives. They wanted to win in the chaos and take advantage of the situation. In the end, they all knelt in front of Zhuo Ran. "But what?" Lian Qiao asked anxiously. "Could it be that the heir will become the emperor? If the heir becomes the emperor, what will happen to our Xianping Hofu?" Ning Shu laughed. "You also know this. Miss, the heir was once your fiancé. If he becomes the emperor, no one in this world will dare to marry you." Lian Qiao stomped her feet. "Miss, this servant knows this. Who would dare to marry the emperor's woman, even if it was an unwanted woman? Then won't it be fine if I don't marry?" Ning Shu said carelessly. "Mississippi." Lian Qiao looked at Ning Shu faintly. "Miss is such a good person, how can you stay in the boudoir all your life? Miss should be happy. Husband and wife love each other, children and grandchildren, and live a rich life." Ning Shu smiled. "I'll take advantage of your auspicious words. But you have to find me a man first. After all, no man dares to ignore Zhuo Ran. Lian Qiao, it's all the heir's fault. Go guard the door. When father returns, quickly inform me. I'll go find mother. Ning Shu said to Lien Xiao. Yes. Ning Shu went to find Madame Rongguo. Madame Rongguo was in old Madame's courtyard. A house full of womenfolk, every face was filled with fear. Zhu Ru. Old Madame Ning Shu shouted. Her face was filled with worry. Grandmother, granddaughter will massage for you. Ning Shu walked over and pressed her fingers on old Madame's temples, gently massaging. Chapter 16:13. All the womenfolk in the backyard gathered in the Dowager Duchess's courtyard. No one spoke, and even their breathing was careful. The atmosphere was extremely stifling. Ning Shu massaged the acupuncture points on both sides of the Dowager Duchess's forehead and looked at the door. Don't massage anymore. You should rest too. It's useless no matter how much you massage now, Dowager Duchess Ning Shu said. A new emperor brings in new courtiers. Even if one lived a rich and boundless life, one would still tremble with fear, afraid of causing trouble. Ning Shu sat in front of the concubine's daughters and picked up a teacup to drink water. The concubine's daughter sitting next to Ning Shu suddenly spoke, "Grandmother, if the heir fails, will we be implicated?" After all, the concubine's daughter looked at Ning Shu, after all, eldest sister and the heir had an engagement in the past. Ning Shu put down the teacup calmly, "The heir and I have already broken off the engagement. It has nothing to do with our marriage. This was a decree personally issued by the late emperor. But others might not think so. I don't care what others think." Ning Shu sat upright on the chair. Half of his buttocks were on the chair, and his buttocks were numb. Ning Shu wanted to collapse on the chair and be as comfortable as possible. In fact, whether or not Chua Qiran became the emperor was not good for the Marquis Xuanping's residence. After all, they had an engagement in the past. They might be implicated if they failed. If they succeeded, the Marquis Xuanping's residence would come to an end. Enough, what are you arguing about? The Dowager Duchess tapped her walking stick and stopped the concubine's daughter who still wanted to speak. The concubine's daughter bit her lip and looked aggrieved. Tears welled up in her eyes. Grandmother only likes eldest sister. Now that eldest sister's engagement has been broken off, it has implicated our younger sister's reputation. Ning Shu sighed and said, "Things change rapidly in the world. When I was engaged to Prince Xian's residence, I also wanted to marry over peacefully. But who knew that such a thing would happen? This matter has hurt your eldest sister even more. Speak properly and know what to say and what not to say. When you go out, you still say that I didn't teach you well." Madame Rongguo looked at the concubine's daughters with a sharp gaze. His own daughter was being defiled by someone else. A few concubine daughters lowered their heads. They were not convinced, but they did not dare to be disrespectful to their mother. Mother had the final say on what they ate, what they wore, and who they married in the future. His entire life's happiness was in the hands of his mother, so he didn't dare to act rashly. However, when the concubine daughters thought about how Ning Shu's engagement had been broken off, they felt a little better. With this commotion, the originally oppressive atmosphere in the room became even stranger. Lien Xiao entered the room, bowed to everyone and said, "The Marquis has returned." The womenfolk in the room all stood up, and Marquis Xianping's Fu entered the room like a gust of wind. The womenfolk bowed one after another. Marquis Xianping sat down and picked up the teacup to drink tea. The Dowager Duchess hurriedly asked, "What's the situation outside?" Marquis Xianping put down his teacup, shook his head and said, "The situation is still unclear. The army stationed outside the city has begun to attack the city. They want to enter the city to support Chua Qiran." Then the heir really rebelled? Old Madame asked in disbelief. He rebelled and killed the emperor in the main hall. However, it shouldn't be a big deal. Right now, it's mainly supported by the guards of Prince Xian's mansion. Ning Shu felt that this riot would soon stop. After all, the crown prince and a few other princes were all the emperor's sons. These people were the legitimate heirs, and they also had a vendetta against the murderer of their father. They shouldn't let Xue Cheran ascend the throne. To be able to force Xue Cheran to kill the emperor in the main hall, the emperor must have forced him too much. Could it be that he didn't search Xue Cheran before entering the palace? As for the army stationed outside the city, they wouldn't be able to cause much trouble. Back then, the emperor had only given them 800 soldiers and horses to suppress the riot. Now, only half of them were left. Once the city gates were closed, these people wouldn't be able to do anything. It was just unknown if there were any of Xue Cheran's men among the imperial guards in the city. Would these people change sides at the last minute? After all, Xue Cheran had a halo around him. Ning Shu asked Marquis Xianping, "Father, is everyone in the palace now?" "They are in the palace," Marquis Xianping said. Ning Shu thought for a moment and said, "Father, I have something to give you." Marquis Xianping called for the servant beside him and followed Ning Shu to get the things and returned to his study. Ning Shu returned to her courtyard and took out a gun from under her pillow. She wrapped the gun in a handkerchief. "Give this to father." "Forget it, I have something to tell father." Ning Shu went to the study and said directly to Marquis Xianping, "Father, bring me into the palace." "Nonsense, you are a girl. The palace is in such a mess now, what are you going to do in the palace?" Marquis Xianping berated Ning Shu. Ning Shu flipped open the handkerchief. "I still have a gun. If possible, I can use this gun to get rid of Xue Cheran. As long as Xue Cheran is dead, Prince Xian residents won't be able to cause any big waves." "You have indeed hidden it." Marquis Xianping stared at the gun in Ning Shu's hand. "Ning Shu, that's not the point. You want to enter the palace to kill Xue Cheran?" Marquis Xianping stared at Ning Shu in a daze. He looked at his daughter with a strange gaze. "Do you know what you are talking about?" "All right, it was fine for a man to kill someone, but a woman who killed someone was a vicious woman. She was not beautiful and pure enough." "Father, my gun skills are not bad. This thing can kill people from a distance. Actually, father can give this thing to the crown prince or other princes. But if Xue Cheran is dealt with, the others will definitely ask father for this thing." "Father, you said that there is only one of this thing. Will they believe it?" Ning Shu asked Marquis Xianping. Marquis Xianping rubbed the space between his eyebrows. He wanted Xue Cheran dead more than anyone else. This was a gamble. Once they lost, they would have their properties confiscated and their ancestors exterminated. "I can kill Xue Cheran quietly without exposing the gun," Ning Shu said. "All of this is for the sake of Marquis Xianping." Marquis Xianping shook his head. "The entire palace has been sealed off. No one can enter." They couldn't enter. Ning Shu pursed his lips. This was a little difficult. "Give it to me. I will think of a way to send this thing to the palace. As for how many princes this thing will fall into, that's hard to say," Marquis Xianping said. Marquis Xianping summoned a secret guard and asked him to find an unfamiliar person to send the gun to the palace. Ning Shu looked at the secret guard. Marquis Xianping said, "Who doesn't have some secret power?" Private soldiers were not allowed to be trained, nor were they allowed to forge weapons, but these secret guards could still be raised. "You really only have one gun?" Marquis Xianping Ning Shu asked. Ning Shu raised his hand and swore, "This is really the last one." "Really? I hope you're not lying. Otherwise, I'll get your mother to search your house." Marquis Xianping's expression was not worried. "Search as much as you want. Anyway, I really don't have it. After this incident, this thing is not a good thing. Keeping it in my hands will cause trouble," Ning Shu said. Perhaps he would be thought of as the creator of this thing. Someone was probably trying to find out where this thing came from. Chapter 1614. The gun that Ning Shu contributed was filled with bullets. It was sent into the palace by Marquis Xuanping's spy. After many twists and turns, the gun ended up in the hands of the Crown Prince. Marquis Xuanping placed his bet on the Crown Prince. After all, the Crown Prince was the legitimate heir. Even if the Crown Prince failed in the end, no one would know that Marquis Xuanping's manor had given him something. Marquis Xuanping tapped his finger on the table as he listened to the report. After the secret guard explained the situation, Ning Shu asked, "Father, when are you going to fix the ancestral hall?" If Cousin Gu had noticed the problem with the ancestral hall, Marquis Xuanping probably wouldn't be here now. Marquis Xuanping looked tired as he pinched his nose until it turned red. "Is now the time to talk about such things?" Ning Shu asked, "Then when is the time?" While everyone's attention was on the palace, it wasn't hard to pry away the gold tiles on the ground and replace them with normal tiles. He did it on the sly. "Daughter can do it at night," Ning Shu said, taking charge of everything. Marquis Xuanping almost couldn't help but roll his eyes. "Are you the kind of person to do such things?" "Anyway, the person who does such things has to be someone our family trusts," Ning Shu said. "Okay, I know what to do. You don't have to worry." Marquis Xuanping was annoyed with this daughter. Staring at the ancestral hall every day would make people suspicious. What a blow. Ning Shu clutched his chest. "Do you think I want to care? It's just that it's too dangerous to leave this thing in the manor." She was like an old woman who kept on chattering and making people hate her. However, Ning Shu still had to say, "Father, it will be grandmother's birthday soon. At that time, we have to open the ancestral hall and light incense. When the new emperor ascends the throne, it's too ostentatious to find someone to kill as an example. What if we bump into them?" No matter how rich they were, they had to keep a low profile. Especially in ancient times where imperial power reigned supreme. The emperor had the capital to have the best things in the world. However, you couldn't have what the emperor didn't have. Marquis Xuanping nodded, "I will pay attention to this." "Okay, you can leave." Things were changing rapidly. Everyone was staring at the palace to see what would happen in the end. Under such an atmosphere, it was hard to breathe. Ning Shu was too lazy to embroider, especially when the forsythia kept circling in front of her. It made her dizzy. Lian Xiao's mouth was muttering and her hands were clasped together in worship. Ning Shu asked, "What are you talking about?" Lian Xiao said, "This servant is praying that the crown prince will not become the emperor. Otherwise, Miss will not have any happiness in this lifetime." Ning Shu couldn't help but laugh. "Is praying useful?" "I don't know. Praying is better than not praying at all," Lian Xiao said. There was still no news from the imperial palace until nightfall. Early the next morning, there was finally news from the imperial palace. Zhuo Ran had been killed. At the same time, the crown prince and 3 other princes had also died. There was only one adult prince left, the 5th prince. The 5th prince was simply a dark horse. This was out of everyone's expectations. Marquis Xuanping was stunned when he heard the news. He asked again, "Who is it?" "The 5th prince." This was fucking a scam. Didn't they give the crown prince a spear? How did the crown prince get killed? Ning Shu searched for information about the 5th prince in his mind. This 5th prince was rather low-key and usually did not have much of a presence. His mother's status was lowly and did not have a strong maternal family or a strong in-laws. In short, he was an unknown person who was ignored by others. In the end, he survived. He might even ascend to the throne. It was enough to make many people's eyes fall to the ground. This 5th prince's luck is unusually good, Marquis Xuanping sighed. The crown prince and the other princes were dead. The rebel Zhuo Ran was also dead. It was not clear what kind of chaotic battle had happened. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. It's really luck. It's really luck. The fifth prince did not join the ranks of the rebels. Maybe the fifth prince will ascend to the throne. The fifth prince has no enmity with Marquis Xianping. It's not bad for him to ascend to the throne. Marquis Xianping let out a sigh of relief. As long as it was not Zhuo Ran who ascended to the throne, it was fine. Besides the fifth prince, there are other princes in the harem. Although they are not adults, they have strong maternal families. They can also get support to ascend to the throne. Ning Shu said. Marquis Xianping nodded. I don't think the dust will settle for a while. Zhuo Ran was dead. Her mission was completed. Yi Qing knew that Zhuo Ran was dead. She was stunned. Zhuo Ran died just like that. In Yi Qing's heart, Zhuo Ran should not be someone who died so easily. Yi Qing clutched her chest. She felt empty in her heart. Tears came out uncontrollably. It was impossible to say that she did not have any feelings for Zhuo Ran. Especially since Zhuo Ran was originally a glorious figure. For a moment, Yi Qing felt like her heart was dead. She seemed to have lost her spirit. What a hopeless era this was. It was not easy to survive. There was no freedom to speak of. It was not even easy to go out. It was impossible to fight for any right to speak in this era. After hearing the news of Zhuo Ran's death, the Yin family's attitude towards Yi Qing changed 180 degrees. Her stepsister mocked and ridiculed her. Didn't she want to marry the heir? Didn't she want to be the heir's consort? Now that the heir was dead, let's see who she would marry. She was so envious and jealous back then. Now, she was adding insult to injury. Even Yi Qing's father had a look of exasperation on his face. Ever since the woman had a relationship with the heir, the other colleagues had been polite to him. Some people even complimented him, saying that he had become the heir's father-in-law. He was still hoping to rely on Prince Xin residence to be promoted. Now that Zhuo Ran was dead, everything was ruined. Moreover, his daughter might become a withered flower and no one would marry her. If Zhuo Ran could succeed in his rebellion, he could become the father-in-law of the country. In the end, he did not have this fate. Yin Guanyuan beat his chest and stamped his feet in his heart. What a pity, what a pity. No matter how disappointed Yin Guanyuan was or how sad Yi Qing was, this was already a foregone conclusion. Zhuo Ran entered the palace to meet the emperor. Although he knew that it might be dangerous, he did not expect the emperor to fall out with him just like that. When the emperor needed to reward the army after winning the war, he was going to throw him into prison. Once he was in prison, anything could happen. It was even possible for him to die inside. The emperor also did not expect that the other party would be so bold and crazy to shoot him to death. After that, in the confrontation between the princes and Zhuo Ran, the princes all tacitly agreed to get rid of Zhuo Ran first before fighting for the throne. After Zhuo Ran died, the first to die was the crown prince. The crown prince was the first in line to inherit the throne. Only with his death would the other princes have a chance. In the end, they were all wiped out. It was simply sending their heads to their deaths. The one who survived was the fifth prince, who had been observing silently from the side. Chapter 16-15. The process was very tortuous and the battle situation was really tragic. A general success was built on thousands of bones. Back then, Zhuo Ran made the surrounding small countries worship him because he had undergone a baptism of iron and blood. He intimidated these small countries so that they didn't dare to act rashly. The weapons provided by Yi Qing gave a war executioner like Zhuo Ran a strong motivation. He was invincible. Was unifying the continent really so worth writing about? Everything had a natural development trajectory. These firearms had already caused interference in this plane. Ning Shu let out a long breath and stretched. He had finally completed the mission and was about to leave. He didn't like the ancient plane. It was too restrictive on the mission. In the middle of the night, Ning Shu didn't sleep. He slipped to the ancestral hall, took out the key he stole from the steward, and opened the ancestral hall. Ning Shu walked into the ancestral hall and bowed to the ancestors. "Ancestors, please don't blame me. This is all for Marquis Xian Ping's residence. During the holidays, unfilial children and grandchildren will burn more paper for you." Ning Shu finished muttering and took out his tools to start prying the gold bricks. He pried all the gold on the ground. Ning Shu couldn't figure out why Marquis Xian Ping refused to do these things. Could it be that he wanted to turn it into a tourist attraction for everyone to visit? Taking advantage of the current chaotic situation, it was simply great to take care of the ancestral hall. Since Marquis Xian Ping couldn't make up his mind and was hoping for a fluke, she would do it first. Marquis Xian Ping definitely wouldn't let the ancestral tablets stay here. Don't expect no one to discover this place. There were many people in Marquis Xian Ping's residence. Some servant might go around showing off and talking nonsense. Ning Shu knew that this ancestral hall was the last straw that crushed Marquis Xian Ping's residence. Many good things were taken out during the confiscation. The golden house made everyone sigh in admiration. All of these were taken to the national treasury, and some were taken to the emperor's private treasury. Ning Shu didn't light a lamp. He could only slowly feel around and pry the floor. If there was a piece of this gold, it could let an ordinary person live for a lifetime. Not only the floor, but the walls were also made of gold bricks. The walls were painted with dust, so it didn't look so ostentatious. When the sun was about to rise, Ning Shu locked the door. He would come back in the evening to pry it open again. Marquis Xian Ping offered incense to the ancestor and asked the ancestor to bless Marquis Xian Ping's residence so that Marquis Xian Ping's residence would be safe. As soon as he opened the door, he saw that the ancestral hall was in a mess. The gold on the ground had been dug out, and there were bumps and hollows everywhere. Marquis Xian Ping almost screamed like a girl seeing a mouse. "Go and call the eldest miss over. Hurry up." Marquis Xian Ping's chest heaved violently as his face flushed red. When Ning Shu rushed to the study, he first poured a cup of tea for Marquis Xian Ping. Xian Ping Ho grabbed the teacup and wanted to smash it on Ning Shu's head. Ning Shu just stared at him. Marquis Xian Ping could only angrily drink his tea. The tea was a little hot, so Marquis Xian Ping directly spat it into the teacup. "Are you trying to burn me to death?" Marquis Xian Ping roared. "Who allowed you to touch the ancestral hall? It's one thing for a girl to enter the ancestral hall, but how dare you touch the ancestral hall? Who gave you the guts?" In ancient times, the sacrificial rites were all done by men. There was no place for women. It's because I've been too lenient on you that you became so bold. Marquis Xian Ping was so angry that his face turned red. Ning Shu said, "Is it because I'm a girl, so entering the ancestral hall will tarnish the ancestors?" "Yes, in the future, if I find out that you sneak into the ancestral hall again, I will punish you according to the family rules." Marquis Xian Ping. Ning Shu waved his hand, "Get out. Go back and reflect on your mistakes." Ning Shu bowed and turned to leave. After leaving the study, Lien Xiao hurriedly fanned Ning Shu and cautiously shouted, "Miss, are you all right?" "I'm fine. What can happen to me?" It seemed that this time, she had really angered Marquis Xian Ping. Ning Shu sighed in her heart and returned to her courtyard. On the way back, she was called by Madame Ronghua for a scolding. "I told you not to jump around just because you are a little smart." Madame Ronghua looked at Ning Shu and frowned. "Are you afraid of losing your status in the family after breaking off the engagement? Is that why you are showing up everywhere? The family doesn't lack a pair of chopsticks. You will always be my daughter. With me around, no one can bully you. Why do you want to make your father angry? Ning Shu was silent. After listening to Madame Ronghua, she said, I am afraid of being abandoned by the family. That's why I am showing up everywhere, thinking of using my own strength to do something for the family. Didn't I say that no matter what you are, you will always be my daughter? The way you are now will only make your father annoyed. Just follow me to take care of the inner residence. Your father will deal with it outside. There is a division of labor. You crossed the line and that's why your father is so angry. Ning Shu bowed and said, I know. I won't do it again. Be quiet for a few days and let your father cool down. Madame Ronghua said. Ning Shu nodded and bowed before leaving Madame Ronghua's courtyard. Lian Xiao looked at Ning Shu blankly and asked, Miss, what did you do wrong? Why did the Marquis and Madame Ronghua scold you? I must have done something wrong. Ning Shu said. Lian Xiao. You don't even know. Hence, Ning Shu stayed in the courtyard and did not go out. She was embroidering in the house. Marquis Xian Ping found someone to renovate the ancestral hall. The hall was in a mess. He cleaned the gold on the floor and hid it in a secret passage. Then, he covered the floor with obsidian. It was not gold after all. It did not have a glorious feeling. Marquis Xian Ping's residence was very unhappy. They made Ning Shu copy the Buddhist scriptures for half a month and put them in front of the ancestral tablets to gain their forgiveness. Ning Shu stopped embroidering. She took out a piece of paper and started copying the Buddhist scriptures. She did not like the ancient times. She followed her father at home and followed her husband after marriage. Men dominated women and she could not even say no. Otherwise, she would be unfilial, not a good woman, not virtuous, not gentle, not blabbering. Lian Xiao did not know what her miss did wrong to make the Marquis so angry. He even made her copy the Buddhist scriptures for half a month. She looked at Ning Shu with tears in her eyes. Miss, poor Mississippi, Ning Shu, eldest miss seemed to have been disliked by the Marquis. The direction of the Marquis Xian Ping's residence changed. A few concubine daughters came to visit when they had nothing to do. They were probably here to see a joke. Ning Shu was not so calculative with a few junior high school girls. Every time they came to visit, Ning Shu closed the door and refused to see them. Every time Lian Xiao heard something unpleasant, she would run back angrily and complain to Ning Shu. Miss, they all said that you have fallen out of favor. Miss, they said that you will not be able to get married and will be an old lady for the rest of your life. Don't you think it's infuriating? Ning Shu put down the brush and looked at the fuming Lian Xiao. They want you to suffer, but you let them do as they wish. Are you stupid? Miss, I am so angry. When Miss was still the prospective heir's wife, those people tried to curry favor with Mississippi. Chapter 16:16. Lian Xiao was a straightforward person. In front of Ning Shu, she would say whatever was on her mind. Ning Shu rolled his eyes. Wasn't he afraid that she would feel uncomfortable? Ning Shu washed his hands and asked, What do you want me to do? Those people are just fence-sitters. In the past, when young Miss was in power, they flattered her. Now, they turn around and speak ill of young Miss behind her back. They are simply vile people. Lian Xiao wiped Ning Shu's hands with a handkerchief. Ning Shu said, Lian Xiao, don't tell me about these things in the future. What other people say is none of our business. Ning Shu didn't care, but he was afraid that Su Zhuru would come back and hear these words and feel sorry for herself. However, Su Zhuru had passed away in a brothel. She had sold her body in a brothel, so this kind of blow was nothing to her. Yes, Nubi will remember. Nubi will never bother Miss with this kind of vexing matter again. Lian Xiao bit her lips, her voice carried a sobbing tone. Is there any news from the Yin family? Is there any news from the little beggar? Ning Shu changed the topic. Lian Xiao shook her head. At this time of the day, there is no one on the streets. The little beggar also did not send any news. If that's the case, then go and give old madam a massage. Ning Shu went to old madam's courtyard and gave her a massage. He also injected a bit of spiritual energy into old madam's body. Old madam treated Su Juru quite well. Her being alive was also a form of protection for Su Juru. When he had nothing to do, he would help old madam boil some medicinal cuisine to eat. As for the Marquis of Xianping, forget it. He didn't have a share. Even if she did, Marquis Xianping would be impatient when he saw her. Why bother? He turned the ancestral hall upside down and felt more at ease. Anyway, it was fine as long as the matter was resolved. The process was not important. Recently, the diet had been very bland because the emperor had passed away, the crown prince and a few other princes had passed away. They couldn't get married during the national funeral, nor could they sing and dance in celebration of peace. Even the brothel's business had declined significantly. Especially when the situation was so tense, no one had the guts to do anything out of line. The emperor's princes were buried in the imperial mausoleum, but Zhuo Qiran and Prince Xian did not receive such good treatment. Rebels and traitors are only fit to be buried in mass graves. Zhuo Qiran's corpse was hung on the city wall, exposed to the wind and rain. It was hot, and flies buzzed around the body. As long as one walked past the corpses, they could smell the vomit-inducing stench. Corpse oil dripped from the ground. I Ching looked at Zhuo Qiran, who was hanging on the city wall with a sad expression. She turned her head and saw Ning Shu sitting in the palanquin. Their gazes met. I Ching couldn't pretend not to see it. She walked over and bowed to Ning Shu. Miss Su. Ning Shu held Lian Xiao's hand and got down from the sedan. He returned the greeting, Miss Yin. Are you here to see him too? I Ching looked at the miserable corpse hanging on the wall. Ning Shu said, sort of. It's not easy for a woman to survive. That person has already passed away. The important person is still alive, Ning Shu said. I Ching nodded. There were tears in her eyes, as well as lingering tiredness and sadness. You're right. Actually, I've always wanted to say sorry to you. You broke off the engagement with Zhuo Qiran partly because of me. I Ching used a handkerchief to wipe the corners of her eyes and said apologetically. Ning Shu didn't care much. Things are unpredictable. Maybe I was at a disadvantage at that time, but now I'm not involved in this rebellion case. Ning Shu felt that I Ching was a smart person. Now that Zhuo Qiran was dead, there was nothing for them to fight over. Moreover, the difference in status between the two families was a little big. The Yin family was just a small family. In this capital where a random brick could hit a third-rank official, it was really inconspicuous. It was too easy to deal with them. On one hand, I Ching sincerely apologized to eliminate the resentment in Ning Shu's heart. On the other hand, she had to think about the Yin family. As a modern woman, it was really not easy to struggle to survive in this era. A little mistake could ruin a woman's life. Ning Shu understood what I Ching was thinking and said, just take it that Zhuo Qiran and I are not fated. He likes you. I Ching bowed. Thank you, Miss Su. When I Ching left, she took 2 more glances at the corpse on the wall. The next day, Zhuo Qiran's body disappeared, becoming an unsolved case. Ning Shu heard Lian Xiao talk about this matter and felt that I Ching took the risk to take Zhuo Qiran's body away and found a place to bury it. She couldn't watch the person she liked die. In this era, love was really a luxury. It was really not easy to meet someone from a similar family background who loved each other. Even if they loved each other, perhaps a man had more than one woman. Depressed. The disappearance of Zhuo Qiran's body didn't attract much attention. Now the ministers were quarreling over the choice of the new monarch. It was reasonable to say that the only adult prince, the fifth prince, should ascend the throne. But it seemed that the fifth prince was too low-key. There weren't many people who supported him. Another candidate was the imperial concubine's son. He was 13 years old now. He could be considered old but also young. These ministers were afraid that the imperial concubine would take over the throne and control the court. Some ministers wanted to kill the imperial concubine and let the prince ascend the throne. But this was the imperial concubine of the late emperor and the one who gave birth to a prince. She couldn't be buried with him. When the imperial concubine heard the minister's suggestions, she was angry and afraid. In the end, the ministers discussed and pushed the fifth prince to the throne. The fifth prince looked easy to control. He didn't have a strong maternal family or a strong maternal family. He didn't have any useful talents when he ascended the throne. He was just a puppet. Under this tacit understanding, the crown fell from the sky and hit the fifth prince's head. Ning Shu wanted to know the situation in the court and asked Marquis Xian Ping. But when she saw Marquis Xian Ping's face, she gave up. She would know who ascended the throne. The ascension must be announced to the world. I don't need you to tell me. Ning Shu didn't approach Marquis Xian Ping. Her actions challenged the male power and made Marquis Xian Ping even more unhappy. Well, heroines were few and far between. Ning Shu felt bitter. She didn't find the origin of this world. Anyway, Marquis Xian Ping's residence didn't have the origin of the world. If there was the origin of the world, 2333, he should have told her. Ning Shu wanted to wander around the palace. There were all kinds of rare treasures in the palace, and there might be the origin of the world. But she didn't seem to have the chance to enter the palace now. Ning Shu was thinking about the origin of the world. Now that she had found two, she was still short of three. When would she be able to gather them? Planes, couldn't she condense one or two extra origin of the world? Ning Shu still wanted to go to the palace, but Madame Rongua called her over. After thinking for a while, Ning Shu said, "Your father wants you to enter the palace." Ning Shu's heart skipped a beat. She asked, "The one ascending the throne is the fifth prince?" If it was a 12 or 13-year-old prince, he wouldn't be in a hurry to enrich the harem. Ning Shu's heart turned cold. It's the fifth prince. The heavenly worship ceremony will be held soon. The fifth prince has ascended the throne. He must enrich the harem. You are the most suitable age in the Marquis's residence. Madame Rongua sighed. Ning Shu. Chapter 16-17. After the fifth prince ascended the throne, it was inevitable that the harem would accept noble ladies from aristocratic families. After all, the fifth prince was isolated and helpless in the court. Marriage was a means to obtain the support of the court officials. The court and the harem were closely related. Ning Shu didn't expect Marquis Xianping to let her enter the palace. After all, she was someone who had broken off the engagement. "Mother, can I?" Ning Shu asked Madame Rongua. Madame Rongua touched Ning Shu's face. "Why not?" "It's because you broke off the engagement. It's a good thing to be able to enter the palace. I reckon that many people will enter the palace this time. Every family has a daughter in the harem, except for our Marquis Xuanping's residence. What will the new emperor think? Will he say that our Marquis Xuanping's residence looks down on the royal family?" Madame Rongua sighed. "Someone has to go to the harem." Ning Shu said directly, "Can I make the emperor a cuckold?" "What cuckold? You just had an engagement with Xue Cheran, and it was broken off." Madame Rongua said angrily. Ning Shu spread her hands. "Mother, don't forget what reason was used to break off the engagement. It was because your daughter was ill. Aren't you afraid that your illness will be passed on to the emperor?" Madame Rongua looked at Ning Shu. You don't want to enter the palace. Ningshu analyzed seriously, Mother, this daughter entering the palace is a kind of contempt to the imperial family. Firstly, this daughter's engagement was broken off and I'm suffering from a serious illness. Secondly, this daughter was once Shuche Ran's fiancée, the fiancée of a traitor. My reputation is not good. Your daughter understands that father wants someone from Marquis Xuanping's family in the harem, but your daughter is not the best candidate. Instead, it will cause a knot in your heart. It's not good for your daughter or Marquis Xuanping's residence. Although the fifth prince is isolated and helpless now, he will endure it. However, he can't touch the tiger's butt. When the fifth prince is strong, any reason can cause Marquis Xuanping's residence to suffer. For example, if the concubine did something crazy, he could directly blame the concubine's family. As long as he wanted to find trouble, reasons were not a problem. If you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. Madame Rongua nodded. What you said makes sense. Your father thinks you're quite smart. It's fine to send you to the palace. No, your daughter is just a little smart. She jumps up and down and will be cannon fodder in the palace, Ningshu immediately said. It's time to admit that you're being clever. Madame Rongua was not in a good mood. She reached out and poked Ningshu's forehead. But if you don't enter the palace, who will you marry in this world? After all, you were once Shuche Ran's fiancé. Shuche Ran has been executed, but this is ultimately a stain. No one will marry a woman who will be attacked by their political enemies. No one will dare to say anything once they enter the palace. What woman can't the emperor have? Madame Rongua said. Zhu Ru, mother can't bear to see you remain unmarried for the rest of your life. You should have your own children and be able to enjoy the happiness of being surrounded by your children. Ningshu was speechless. What can I say? I can also despair. If she had not been engaged to Shuche Ran, many things would not have happened. Marquis Xuanping's residence would not have been confiscated. Su Zhu Ru would not have spent her life in a brothel. A pure and innocent noble lady serving all kinds of people. Now Shuche Ran was dead, but the mark engraved on her body was still there. Damn it. It was simply too much. Ningshu simply did not know what to say. Madame Rongua said, think about it carefully. Ningshu nodded. I know, mother. I will think about it. Ningshu left the courtyard. She felt helpless. She wanted to have fun in the palace, but not in this way. In fact, entering the palace was essentially the same as entering the brothel. It was just the difference between serving many men and serving one man. The women in the harem served the emperor, and it was a way for the emperor to weigh the aristocratic courtiers. Miss, do you want to enter the palace to be a consort? Lien Qiao said happily. Miss, entering the palace is also a good path. Yes. Ningshu sighed. She had no choice. Sister, father and mother really dote on you. A concubine's daughter walked over. Ningshu bowed. This concubine's daughter was called Su Xiangqiu. She was only 1 year younger than Su Zhu Ru. A woman whose engagement was broken off can still become an imperial concubine. Su Xiangqiu's tone was sour and jealous. She twisted her handkerchief in her hands. Ningshu raised her eyebrows. Could it be that this girl wanted to enter the palace? Her age was suitable, 15 years old. The minimum age for the draft was 14 years old. Unfortunately, she was a concubine's daughter. If a concubine's daughter entered the palace, wouldn't it be telling the emperor that the Marquis Xuanping's residents did not like her and that a concubine's daughter was enough? Ningshu cursed in her heart. Trying to figure out the emperor's intentions was really too tiring. A person was changeable. It was impossible to completely understand a person. For example, after interacting with 2333 for so long, she still did not understand what kind of person 2333 was. He was always selective and mentally retarded. It would be impossible to say that 2333 was mentally retarded. Ning Shu unceremoniously rolled her eyes and said arrogantly, "Father and mother dote on me. So what? If you want to enter the palace, go tell them. What's the use of being jealous of me?" Su Xiangqiu was angered by Ning Shu. "Sister, you don't have any reputation. I really don't know what you're so proud of." Ning Shu smiled and said, "I'm proud of myself. I'm just like this." Su Xiangqiu was too lazy to argue with Ning Shu. She bowed and headed towards Ronghua Furen's courtyard. Lian Xiao immediately said, "Miss, does second miss also want to enter the palace to become an imperial concubine?" "Marquis and Furen have already said that miss is entering the palace. Does second miss want to replace you?" Ning Shu brushed her sleeves and smiled. She was afraid that Marquis Xianping would not give up on letting her enter the palace. A concubine's daughter was not enough. In the end, it could be, the two of them entering the palace together. A buy one get one free package. Ha ha ha. Ning Shu returned to her own courtyard. Should she enter the palace or not? Ning Shu felt that her mission was almost complete. It was time to leave this world. As for whether to enter the palace or not, it was up to her, Su Juru, to decide. Leave this world, leave this world. However, 2333 did not inform her to leave this world. Therefore, this mission had to continue. Should she grow a rash on her face or participate in the selection? Her client should give her some hints. Fortunately, after the fifth prince ascended the throne, the court would be stabilized for a period of time. This was enough time for Ning Shu to feel conflicted. Lian Qiao kept chattering by Ning Shu's ear, telling Ning Shu not to be replaced by second Mississippi. Ning Shu propped up her chin and asked lazily, "Is it really that good to enter the palace?" "Of course it's good. Enter the palace to become an imperial concubine, give birth to a prince, give birth to a prince. If she gave birth to a prince, he might inherit the throne in the future and become the Empress Dowager, the most honorable woman in the world." Ning Shu's heart was filled with a string of thoughts. Whether to enter the palace or not depends on fate. Moreover, this imperial concubine is chosen by His Majesty. Whoever he likes will be. Chapter 16-18. As Ning Shu was talking about the selection, he suddenly felt like he was selecting animals. He looked at the teeth, body shape, limbs, and other aspects. The more he thought about it, the funnier it became. Standing in rows for selection. Then locked in a cage, survival of the fittest. If the mother was strong enough, she would raise a strong child. But Lian Qiao was very anxious, "But we can't let second miss go. Without second miss, I may not be selected." Ning Shu looked at Lian Qiao's anxious expression. "All right, what's there to be anxious about?" "Miss, I'm so anxious and you're still like this. Miss, can you not bully me?" Lian Qiao felt like she was a fly in a bottle, blindly bumping around. Then Miss looked at her with a smile. "Lian Qiao's heart, if you really want to enter the palace, you have to be calm. There are many noble people in the palace. What if you offend them by making a fuss like this?" Ning Shu shook his head and started to embroider. Ning Shu spent a lot of effort on this birthday gift. Ning Shu even used his embroidery skills. This thing was also very sentimental. It was like painting, but it used needle and thread. The next day, Ronghua Furen called Ning Shu and Su Xiangqiu over. The two met at the entrance of the courtyard. Su Xiangqiu bowed to Ning Shu, "Sister." Ning Shu grunted. Seeing Su Xiangqiu, Ning Shu roughly understood what Marquis Xianping was thinking. He wanted the D daughter and the concubine daughter to participate in the selection. One of them would be selected. If both of them were selected, they would have more power in the harem. No matter who was favored, it would be beneficial to the Marquis Xian Ping's residence. Ning Shu cursed in his heart. Ning Shu and Su Xiangqiu entered Ronghua Furen's courtyard. Marquis Xian Ping and Ronghua Furen sat in the front hall. The two of them bowed. Marquis Xian Ping put down his teacup and looked at Ning Shu and Su Xiangqiu, saying, "Both of you will participate in the selection. As for who will be selected, it will depend on your luck." Marquis Xian Ping's residence would produce an imperial concubine. As for who it was, there was no guarantee. Su Xiangqiu bowed emotionally. "Thank you, father." "Thank you, mother." Ning Shu also bowed. Everyone had their own ambitions. Su Xiangqiu wanted to enter the palace to fight for riches and honor. As for whether or not he could enter the palace, Ning Shu did not have any opinion. After the announcement of Marquis Xian Ping's residence, Madame Ronghua continued. "Next, there will be a tailor who will take your measurements. There are also jewelry in the shop. You can pick whatever you like. The quality of these things is more important than quantity. You have to choose something suitable for yourself. When you go out, you will represent the Marquis Xian Ping's residence." "Thank you, mother," Ning Shu said to Su Xiangqiu. In the following days, Ning Shu and Su Xiangqiu were very busy. If they weren't choosing accessories, they were choosing clothes. Of course, there was no lack of friction. Sometimes, when Ning Shu set his eyes on something, Su Xiangqiu would snatch it from him and even use sour words to pressure him. "You are the daughter of the first wife. These things should be enough. I am the daughter of a concubine. I don't have any jewelry that I can take out." If it was just a piece of jewelry, Ning Shu would not take it to heart. If you said you wanted it, he would give it to you. However, if you were to pressure him like this, you would think that you could become an imperial concubine, so you had to vent your anger. Respect was mutual. Ning Shu did not give in at all. He directly said, "If you lack something, tell mother." "Why are you telling me what you lack? If you haggle over small benefits every day, how can you go far in the palace?" It was not without reason that a daughter should be raised well. She had seen many things and would not be blinded by small benefits. Su Xiangqiu wanted to disgust him. Su Xiangqiu was refuted by Ning Shu. His face darkened. "You can't take away all the good things." "How can I take away all the good things? You can choose whatever you want in such a big shop." There was a jewelry shop in the Marquis Xian Ping's residence. The shopkeeper moved all the things to the Marquis Xian Ping's residence for the two to choose. Ning Shu took a pair of earrings, 2 hairpins, and a high-quality bracelet. Then, he turned and left. Ning Shu rarely went out of his courtyard. He was waiting to enter the palace for the selection. Not long after the fifth prince ascended the throne, the ministers reported that the imperial harem was empty and wanted to hold a selection. Naturally, the fifth prince agreed. Then, the selection began on a grand scale. Early in the morning, Ning Shu was tidied up by a few maids and nannies. He was tossed around and washed. When entering the palace, he had to go through all kinds of examinations. They checked whether he was a virgin, whether he had body odor, and whether his teeth were neat. Ning Shu felt that the examination and virginity part was really fucking fraudulent. Ning Shu still wanted to insist on checking whether the fifth prince's penis was too long. He wanted to give him a surgery while he was at it. Fuck. Ning Shu and Su Xiangqiu were stuffed into a sedan and carried to the imperial city. There were many people on the way to the imperial city. There was a queue at the entrance of the palace. Ning Shu got down from the sedan and entered the palace with Su Xiangqiu. First, he had his body checked. To be honest, Ning Shu was afraid that his penis would be broken if he poked it with his finger. His penis was very fragile. If he ran and jumped, it would be gone. Only those who had it were considered virgins. If the nannies used too much force, tisk tisk, Ning Shu's mind was scattered. He waited for the nannies to check him over and over again. Only then did he pass. Other things aside, Su Zhiru's appearance and figure weren't bad. After the examination, Ning Shu stood at the side, bored. He stared blankly and communicated with 2333 in his mind. Does this palace have the origin of the world? After a while, 2333 said, no. Really? Ning Shu asked. I really didn't. I swear on my integrity. 2333 said firmly. Then how did you find the origin of the world? Ning Shu asked 2333. She had always been curious about how 2333 found the origin of the world. The system can scan a certain range. The origin of the world has a pure attribute. It is very easy to scan. 2333 explained. No origin of the world. If he had known, he would have grown pockmarks on his face. Ning Shu touched the sachet on his waist. If something happened, he could use it to solve the problem. Miss Su. Yi Qing walked over and bowed to Ning Shu. Yi Qing dressed herself up and was extremely beautiful. Ning Shu was surprised. Yi Qing actually came to participate in the selection. It was quite ironic. Zhuo Charon's two women were now participating in the selection. It was very likely that they would be sharing a bed with other men. Ning Shu returned the greeting. Miss Yin, you also came to participate in the selection. My father forced me. As a woman, I can only obey the family's arrangements. Yi Qing looked sad. It was different from the cheerfulness Ning Shu saw for the first time. This was an era that made women depressed and made men happy. Ning Shu said, I wish you the best of luck. Yi Qing was the female lead. Now the story had changed. It was no longer a story of conquering the world, galloping on the battlefield and achieving unparalleled achievements. Now it had become a plot. Chapter 1619. From conquering the world to scheming in the palace, the story changed too quickly like a tornado. But whether it was conquering the world or scheming in the palace, they were both soul-stirring stories. They were all stories of fighting to the death. Ning Shu grinned. Yi Qing was indifferent to Ning Shu's blessings. She had to become a concubine of a man she had never met before, enter the boxy harem, and go around for a man. It was quite a despairing thing. Sometimes, Yi Qing wanted to die with Zhuo Charan. It wasn't that she wanted to die for Zhuo Charan. It was that in this era, Yi Qing's heart was filled with uneasiness. She didn't feel safe at all. This wasn't the world she was familiar with. But she was also afraid of death. It wasn't easy for her to be reborn. She was originally a police officer who punished evil and promoted good, but here, she could only restrain her personality and live like walking on thin ice in this world. I'm just the daughter of a small official. The emperor probably won't take a fancy to me, Yi Qing said. Those who came to the selection were all noble ladies from aristocratic families. There was a set of rules. Some women were just here to go through the motions. They would definitely be selected. Who said that a small official can't be selected? Ning Shu said lightly. Men like to be heroes in front of women. They were men. When facing the noble ladies of aristocratic families, the pressure was great. They might want to dote on women with low status. Now that the fifth prince had a favor to ask of these aristocratic family officials, it was inevitable that he would feel weak in front of these noble ladies. So, anyone could be selected. Yi Qing just smiled and didn't say anything. You have a high chance of being selected. The empress was also the daughter of an ordinary official. She suddenly became the empress. This empress was probably in a difficult situation. The new concubines in the harem had better family backgrounds than her. It was inevitable that she would lack confidence and couldn't even control these concubines. The emperor and empress were really cowardly. The noble ladies who entered the palace would enjoy a period of time. If the emperor's wings were full, he didn't have to dote on the women in the harem. How miserable. Yi Qing sighed. Fate really doesn't control people at all. People lived in this world not only for themselves. There were many roles. To parents, you were a child. To children, you were a parent. To bosses, you were an employee. To the country, you were a citizen. Every role had responsibilities and obligations. People and their surroundings were a huge network of relationships. If you wanted to break free from the network of relationships, reality would teach you a lesson. This was the reason why Ning Shu and Yi Qing were here. We're about to leave this world. Find a place to sit down and wait for our client to return to this world. 2333's voice rang in Ning Shu's mind. Ning Shu bid farewell to Yi Qing. Coincidentally, it was also time for Yi Qing to meet the emperor. Ning Shu sat on a stone bench and heard the eunuch announce loudly, Yin Guanyuan's daughter, Yi Qing, has been selected. Ning Shu smiled. As expected, she was the female lead. At the same time, it also showed that the fifth prince's heart was weak, and that he was afraid to face the daughter of an aristocratic family. Ning Shu left Su Zhiru's body and returned to the system space. After a bout of dizziness, Ning Shu stretched her back. She was a lady of a respectable family, so she couldn't move too much. With his soul imprisoned in such a body, Ning Shu felt that his soul was about to rust. It was Su Zhiru's choice whether to enter the palace or not. If she didn't want to enter the palace, she had prepared something in the sachet. Smearing a little on her neck, there would be raised red dots like an allergic reaction. However, if such a situation occurred in front of the emperor, she might be blamed for being impolite in front of the emperor. If her body became ill, it would be even harder for her to marry in the future. Ning Shu lay limply on the sofa and began to absorb the soul energy. Ning Shu felt that the soul energy this time was more than the previous mission. She felt very carefree. Ning Shu let out a long breath. Her hard work in completing the mission was not in vain. Ning Shu lowered her head and looked at her soul. Her soul was stronger than before. Ever since she completed the mythical beast mission, her soul was at the point where it would be blown away by the wind. Now, it wouldn't be blown away by the wind. Her soul was slowly becoming stronger again. She hugged herself in pain. Don't do this again next time. If it happened again, Ning Shu felt that she would be fucked. Ning Shu opened the attribute panel and looked at the rewards. Name, Ning Shu. Age, 27. Level, Super Mission Taker. Accumulative Points Plate, 111. 1,000,000 points for 1 accumulative point plate. Soul Value, 2 Life Value, 1 Wisdom, 2 Luck, 2 Charm, 1 Spiritual Power, 2 Martial Strength, 3 Aptitude, 2 Faith, 50900 Merit, 17330 Soul Strength, 20 Authorization Ticket, 1 Law Comprehension, none Honorary Titles, Goddess of War, Selfless Ancestor Tools, Calm Aura, Calming Pill, Faith Aura, Amulet 4, Upgraded Amulet 2 Skills, 5th Ring Shooting Technique, Intermediate Close Combat Technique, Exceptional Martial Arts Proficiency, Intermediate Poison Technique, Beginner Business Management Knowledge, Beginner Code Programming, Beginner Lawyer Skill, Sage Ghost Catching Skill, Beginner Cooking Skill, Beginner Embroidery Skill. Aura, Mother of the World Empress Blessing, Model Worker Sister Chen Shi's Blessing, Leader Aura Grass Blessing, Lifelong Friend Miao Miao Miao's Blessing. Blessing of the Healer Zhu Sun Yang, Blessing of the Founding Lady Chen Ermiai, Blessing of the Law Beauty Chen Ning, Blessing of the Blood Clan's Nemesis Jasmine, Blessing of the Transcending Race Communication by Sanyang, Blessing of the Brave Wang Ying. Fulfill Su Zhiru's wish, ensure the safety of the Marquis Mansion and prevent Xue Cheran from sitting on the throne. Mission completion rate, 100%. Mission reward obtained, 5 point cards, 3 attribute points, 4,000 faith power, 60% of soul power. Intermediate embroidery skill. Exceptional martial arts minor achievement. It turned out that there was 60% of soul strength. No wonder it took longer to absorb soul strength this time. It was great. Ning Shu felt very satisfied. The only regret was that she didn't find the world's origin. If she did, she would be even happier. Ning Shu was about to add the 3 attribute points when she heard a ding from the chat system. Ning Shu lay on the sofa and opened the chat system. Unknowingly, her friend list had 3 friends. Mei Ziqing, Wen Xing, one she didn't know, and the last one she didn't contact. This time, it was Wen Xing's system that sent the message. It was the cute little loli system. But could a loli become a system? Okay, she couldn't underestimate anyone, especially that pervert Qing Fei who became a system. Anyone who could become a system was a talent. 65892 system, darling, are you there? Ning Shu saw this name. So sweet. Ning Shu, I'm here. What's the matter? 65892 system, my master wants me to thank you. The thing you lent him is very useful. Ning Shu, that's good. 65892 system, it's so nice to kiss you. Are you free now? My master needs support, Ning Shu coughed. She really couldn't bear to refuse, but she still firmly refused. I'm not free. Chapter 1620. The 65892 system felt embarrassed and told Ning Shu not to take it to heart and to pretend that she didn't hear it. If you feel guilty, please support its master. Ning Shu was speechless. When did I feel guilty? This little loli is really, every time Ning Shu chatted with System 65892, he felt like a knife was stabbing his heart. There was no harm without comparison. However, Ning Shu did not expect 2333 to take care of him in every possible way. It was not impossible to communicate with others. After ending the chat with System 65892, Ning Shu opened it. It was a message from Mei Ziqing, whom he had not seen in a long time. Ning Shu, what's the matter? Mei Ziqing, do you want to do a mission together? Ning Shu thought for a while and asked, what kind of mission is it? Mei Ziqing, it's a world of humans and humanoid weapons. Do you want to do it? Humanoid weapons. What kind of strange world is this? His worldview was being refreshed every second. Ning Shu thought for a while, alright, I accept. But I need to wait for a while. I need to understand the law. Mei Ziqing, what law are you comprehending now? Ning Shu, water law. Mei Ziqing, I'm in Water City now. You can come. Ning Shu, okay. Ning Shu closed the chat system, distributed his 3 attribute points, and went to find Mei Ziqing. Name, Ning Shu. Age, 27 level, Super Mission Taker Points Plate, 1115. 10 million points for 1 point plate. Soul points, 2 health points, 1 wisdom, 21 luck, 21 charm, 1 spirit, 2 combat points, 31 aptitude, 2 faith, 50900400 merit, 17330 soul strength, 204 authorization ticket, 1 law comprehended, none honorary titles, goddess of war, selfless ancestor items, calm halo, tranquilizer, faith halo, amulet 4, upgraded amulet 2. Skills, 5th ring shooting technique, intermediate close combat technique, intermediate martial arts, intermediate poison technique, beginner business management knowledge, beginner code programming, beginner lawyer skill, sage ghost catching skill, beginner cooking skill, intermediate embroidery skill. Aura, mother of the world empress blessing, model worker sister Chen Shi's blessing, leader aura grass blessing, lifelong friend Miao Miao Miao's blessing. Blessing from Zhu Sun Yang, blessing from Chen Ermiai, blessing from Chen Ning, blessing from Jasmine, blessing from Bai San Yang, blessing from Wang Ying, blessing from Wang Ying, the heart of bravery Ning Shu stood in the passage leading to the law space. After kneading the dough for a while, he stood on the bluestone slab of the law space. He felt that the person who created this space did not have a good sense of aesthetics. Every world space was the same. A barren aesthetic. Ning Shu opened the chat system and asked Mei Ziqing, "Where are you?" "Mei Ziqing, let's meet at the restaurant." Ning Shu went to the restaurant. When he arrived, Mei Ziqing was already there. Ning Shu waved at him. Ning Shu walked over and saw that Mei Ziqing was covered in water vapor, but he was not wet. Mei Ziqing must have improved his comprehension of the law space. Ning Shu sat opposite Mei Ziqing and said, "You're much stronger than before." Mei Ziqing flicked his hair. "Just a little bit of improvement. It's all accumulated over time. Sometimes, I feel defeated. You don't know this, but when I was comprehending the laws, a little imp beside me had an epiphany. I even had thoughts of killing myself." Mei Ziqing shook his head. "I really wanted to kill that little imp. It destroyed my confidence." Ning Shu. It was indeed a blow. Sometimes, comparisons were odious. Ning Shu comforted Mei Ziqing. "You're fine. I slept for a long time." Mei Ziqing. "You're even weirder than me. How can you sleep like that?" Mei Ziqing called the waiter and ordered some pastries. Ning Shu ordered 2 cups of hot drinks. As he drank, he asked, "How did you find me for this mission?" The background of the world is huge. One mission taker is useless. So it's better to have a few more," Mei Ziqing said. Ning Shu nodded. "Eat. Then you can comprehend the law," Mei Ziqing said. Ning Shu nodded. The two left the restaurant and looked for a place to comprehend. Mei Ziqing comprehended some laws and found a place with stronger laws. Ning Shu could not. Before he even walked in, he felt a strong pressure. "Go ahead." "I'll stay here," Ning Shu said. Ning Shu sat down and started comprehending the law. With his eyes closed, Ning Shu felt like he was floating on the sea, wave after wave. "Fuck, I want to sleep again." Ning Shu pinched his thigh. Fuck, he sacrificed so much and risked his life to enter the law space. He did not come here to sleep. Ning Shu was exasperated at himself for not living up to expectations. Ning Shu straightened his back and earnestly comprehended the laws. In his ears, there seemed to be the sound of waves, the sound of dripping water, and the sound of surging tsunamis. The sound waves were nearly enough to shatter his heart. All kinds of sounds rang in Ning Shu's ears. Then Ning Shu fell asleep. She slept very soundly and did not need to think about anything. She swayed and did not seem to have any thoughts. She did not need to do anything. She just wanted to sleep like this. Well, to hell with comprehending. I want to sleep. Ning Shu felt as if she was a fish swimming in the sea, incomparably happy. Then a wave hit and the fish was washed ashore. He jumped with all his might. Then Ning Shu woke up. Ning Shu was hugging a stone pillar by the side of the road. He was drooling as he slept. Fortunately, he was in his soul form. Otherwise, he would have been raped. Ning Shu felt very lucky. Although Ning Shu felt that he was overthinking. Mei Ziqing looked at Ning Shu silently. Ning Shu stood up and asked, "How long have I slept?" "I don't know. If you slept here in the Time City, you would have slept until you died. Or your soul would have been exhausted," Mei Ziqing said calmly. A well appeared on his forehead. "You said you were sleeping. I thought you were joking." "Ning Shu, what can I do? I am also in despair. But there is some water vapor on your body. You should have comprehended something," Mei Ziqing said. Ning Shu looked at his body. "No, I didn't comprehend anything. To comprehend a law, you have to turn yourself into that law, merge with it, and then control it," Mei Ziqing said. There is some water vapor on your soul. You should be starting to comprehend the law. Ning Shu, who knows what's going on? Could it be that one could comprehend the law while sleeping? That would be strange. If it was that easy, so many people would not have failed and chose to cultivate incantations instead of comprehending the law. Chapter 1621. Comprehending the laws is a very difficult process. It can only be done slowly. This depends on one's perception. Mei Ziqing patted Ning Shu's shoulder and realized that his hand had sunk into Ning Shu's shoulder. Mei Ziqing was speechless for a moment. He retracted his hand naturally and said, "Honestly, your soul is so weak right now. Is it hard for you to do missions?" "Ning Shu, it's okay. One of the missions is too difficult, so my soul is like this. I can't do anything about it." Ning Shu shrugged. "Can I do the mission now?" "Yes." Mei Ziqing disappeared first. Ning Shu also told 2333 to go back. Ning Shu hated the feeling of being pinched. It was mainly because his soul was weak that the feeling was strong. Every time he teleported, he felt like he was carsick. "Ning Shu, I'm so empty. No, I'm so weak." Ning Shu lay on the sofa. He heard the sound of the chatting system. Ning Shu opened the chatting system to see who had sent a message. The chatting system was trash. With this thing, one would want to have fun. One would not be able to control the urge to chat with others. It was Mei Ziqing. She said that she would enter the plane first and ask Ning Shu to prepare. Ning Shu replied, "Be careful." She had to take it slow. Before every mission, she had to relax for a while. Ning Shu opened the interface. He wanted to see what the client, Su Juru, would choose. Would she choose not to enter the palace or not? Ning Shu looked at the screen. Su Juru was wearing a palace dress and sitting in the palace. There were many other women in the palace. They were all concubines. Su Juru's seat was in the middle. Her position was not high. The empress sat at the head of the table. She was talking about the rules of the harem. She said that she wanted to reduce the expenses of the harem, that the drought in Hanyang was serious, etc. But most of the concubines, especially those who sat in the front and had higher positions, had disapproving expressions. They obviously did not care about the empress. The empress's family background was not enough for her to be the empress. Without a strong maternal family, there was no one in the harem who could support her. Therefore, she did not have any dignity in front of the concubines in the imperial harem and did not take her words to heart. The empress clenched her fists and told the concubines to go back. These concubines stood up and bowed, then left the empress' palace in 2s and 3s. Ning Shu was not surprised that Su Juru would choose to enter the palace, because Su Juru really had no other choice. If she really hurt her body to avoid the selection, would the final result be better than entering the palace? It was difficult to have the best of both worlds. At the very least, in the palace, one would be dressed in brocade and surrounded by palace maids. What would one lose if they enjoyed these things? At least, compared to the commoners who relied on the heavens for food, their lives were much better. He wanted freedom, wealth, power, and love. He wanted everything. There was no such good thing in the world. You have to give up something to gain something. Ning Shu believed that Su Juru would be able to survive in the harem. If she could survive in the brothel, she wouldn't be able to survive in this harem. She wouldn't be looked down upon and ruined by all kinds of men. She would have a noble status in the harem. Ning Shu turned off the video. He hoped that Su Juru would have a safe life and survive the struggle in the harem. Ning Shu took out a book from the bookshelf and read it. He flipped through it page by page. In the entire system space, there was only the sound of Ning Shu flipping through the book. It felt a little peaceful. Ning Shu read 10 lines at a glance. He finished reading the book and put it back on the bookshelf. Seeing the peerless martial arts on the bookshelf, Ning Shu used his spiritual power to invade the peerless martial arts. There was chaos inside. There was nothing. It was pitch black, similar to the black hole on the wall. Ning Shu withdrew his spiritual power. As long as he found the other world origins, he would be able to form a world. It would slowly form heaven and earth, mountains and rivers. Heaven and earth would have light, water, and black clothes. Slowly, creatures would be formed, and creatures would slowly evolve into all kinds of creatures. Ning Shu's heart was filled with endless imagination, and his face was full of longing. Oh, my world! When he thought of this, Ning Shu's heart was full of motivation. He felt that the world was full of love. She would always find the world origin. Ning Shu sat on the sofa and asked 2333, has anyone summarized what plane the world origin appears in the most? Ning Shu counted on his fingers. One world origin was found in the ancient plane, and the other was found in the magic world. Was it more likely for the world origin to appear in the fantasy world and the ancient world? That's not necessarily true. The world origin is originally the plane building the attributes it wants, and then accidentally producing one or two attributes. It can appear in any plane, or it can appear in many planes. But there are hundreds of millions of planes, countless planes. It's still possible to find 5 world origins. 2333 said. But if you want to find one world early, maybe the next world will have it. Maybe the next world won't have it. It's full of uncertainty. Ning Shu was speechless. It was all luck to find this kind of thing. To search one plane after another, Ning Shu didn't know how long it would take. Just thinking about it gave him a headache. Ning Shu pulled his hair. Can't you find out if a plane has a world origin in advance? Sorry, I don't have such an ability. Almost no one has such an ability to find out if a plane has a world origin. What, you want to take a shortcut now? 2333 said. Ning Shu shrugged. Finding the world origin and completing the mission are both the same. How can you say that I'm taking a shortcut? Wouldn't it be better if I could find out the world origin? Sorry, I'm so incompetent. If the world was so easy to build, there wouldn't be so many task takers who didn't build a world. 2333 said with some sarcasm. Obviously, he was mocking Ning Shu. Ning Shu rolled his eyes. He didn't know what he said had hit 2333's glass heart, making 2333 have such a big reaction. You're the one who said that you're incompetent. He had just made the system, and now 2333 was throwing a tantrum. He hadn't even crossed the bridge, and he was already tearing it down. Ning Shu felt that 2333's hormones were a little out of whack. Ning Shu opened the exchange store and bought some fasting pills and water. These were things that could ensure survival. He could spend some points to exchange for them. These little things could be of great use. Eating these was better than eating garbage. They could prevent hunger and were hygienic. If he could make good use of them, why not? Ning Shu asked 2333, you know what plane Mei Ziqing is talking about, right? Don't send it wrongly, 2333 replied, I've been locating it. It's done. Good, then let's go do the mission. Become Pifumai, marry Mr. Perfect, build a world, and do whatever he wanted. However, the process of teleportation made Ning Shu Feiyang unhappy. Chapter 1622. Ning Shu's soul was weak now, but now that they were in a high-level plane, it was as if Ning Shu had been crushed during the teleportation. Her soul seemed to have been crushed into a piece of paper and stuffed into her body. It was simple and rough. It was really bitter. Ning Shu opened her eyes and vomited. Transmigrating to this plane was even more uncomfortable than the previous ones. Was it more advanced than the high-level plane? Ning Shu vomited. Someone patted her on the back and asked gently, "What's wrong?" Ning Shu wiped her mouth with her sleeve and turned to see a man. This man had a head of neat black hair. Seeing Ning Shu staring at him, his face turned red. "Nicole, are you okay?" Ning Shu shook her head. "I'm fine." Ning Shu looked around and saw many corpses lying around. They were animals covered in white scales. They were very strange animals. Yes, there were monsters. Ning Shu did not finish the plot and did not know the background of this world. "What's wrong with you?" the man asked Ning Shu. Ning Shu waved her hand. "It's nothing. Let's rest for a while." "Okay." The man nodded and took out something that looked like bread but also didn't look like bread for Ning Shu. Ning Shu tore the bread in half and gave half to the man. The man looked at Ning Shu strangely. "You eat it." "I don't eat this." Ning Shu saw the man's strange expression and did not know if she had done something taboo. She silently chewed on the bread. The man patted Ning Shu's back. "Slow down. Be careful not to choke. You just vomited. Eat slowly." Ning Shu nodded and swallowed the coarse bread. She began to receive the plot. This was a world of people and weapons, and the man beside her was a weapon. Ning Shu was speechless. The man had a crossbow. It was a long-range weapon. The weapon was a kind of fruit that the moon tree bore. When it matured, people would pick it and sign a contract. After the contract was formed, the contract runes would appear on both parties' bodies. Of course, this kind of contract could be cancelled, and the weapon and the person could cooperate for a short period of time. Weapons could turn into humans, but they ate a kind of wild beast called the Luna beast. As long as the weapon hunted these beasts, it would be able to obtain energy. Some weapons could work with humans to hunt Luna beasts for food. Weapons could only be used by humans, and only weapons could kill Luna beasts. The two relied on each other and resisted each other. The weapons looked down on the weak bodies of humans. However, they could only be used by humans to kill the Luna beasts. Although weapons could transform into humans, no one would treat weapons as humans because they were of different races. Weapons could be enjoyed like humans, but female weapons couldn't get pregnant, and male weapons couldn't make human women pregnant. Ning Shu guessed that it might be the separation of birth and reproduction. Furthermore, weapons couldn't taste human food because they didn't have a sense of taste. Instead, it would affect them to a certain extent. It was actually a weapon, but it was rusty and blunt. That was why the man felt a little strange when Ning Shu gave him bread. The moon tree, the moon beast. No one knew why they had such names. The weapons in this world were dazzling. Male, female, single, double, multiple, of course, they could transform into humans, twins, multiple births. There were so many weapons that it was unimaginable. Bows, crossbows, spears, staffs, knives, swords, spears, shields, axes, halberds, maces, whips, maces, hammers, forks, palladium, dagger axes. There were also all kinds of hidden weapons. Other than that, there were also guns, cannons. Weapons were divided into long-range, close-range, and defensive weapons. There were all kinds of weapons. This was a world where weapons, humans, and Luna beasts existed. Luna beasts grew up eating all kinds of ores. They especially liked to attack the moon tree that could produce weapons. Weapons relied on hunting Luna beasts for food. It was really a circle. Similarly, Luna beasts were also a very dangerous existence to humans. When Luna beasts grew to a certain extent, they could release laser cannons. Luna beasts would also attack human cities according to the moon's cycle. Without the Luna beasts, the weapons would not be of any use to him. Of course, there were also weapons that were born with good conditions. They didn't need humans to help them hunt. They were sought after by humans and worshipped by weapons. Other than weapons, humans, Luna beasts, and Luna beasts, there was another type of weapon. Some weapons were abused, defiled, and treated cruelly by their owners. They chose to become evil. Their hearts were twisted and filled with hatred. They drank their owner's blood and ate their owner's flesh to break free from their restraints. These weapons were called depraved weapons. The person who commissioned them was called Nicole. She was a martial master. Actually, she wasn't really a martial master because she didn't have enough money to use the weapons. Weapons also needed money. If she had money, she could let humans use the weapons to hunt. She didn't need to choose a fixed contract with a human. Some weapons were free. If she was hungry, she could spend some money to let the martial master use the weapons to hunt. Nicole didn't have any weapons. She found a crossbow in a garbage dump. The garbage dump was filled with dead weapons. They were either destroyed or had lost their value. They were left here to survive. Without humans to hunt, the weapons would only starve to death. The crossbow was full of wounds. Nicole found it. It was the black-haired man's crossbow, Lar. The crossbow was originally a deadly weapon. It was a small crossbow, a long-range weapon. If it stood too far away, it wouldn't be lethal enough. If it stood too close, it would be easy for the enemy to get close to it. In short, it was a useless weapon. A martial master didn't only have one weapon. They also had weapons for long-range attacks. They cooperated with each other. However, Nicole and Lar, a poor martial master and a weapon that was reborn from a garbage dump, struggled to survive in this dangerous world. They worked hard to save money and supported each other. Lar asked Nicole to find another weapon, a fire stick. However, Nicole didn't want to. They had feelings for each other, but Lar felt inferior. He felt that Nicole deserved better. Lar was dealt with because he had some flaws. He could give up his life for Nicole and protect her. However, he didn't have the guts to accept Nicole's feelings. It was rare for a relationship between a human and a weapon to end well. Weapons wouldn't age and had a limited lifespan. They couldn't give humans a complete family. Maybe it was a temporary relationship. In the end, humans would still spend their lives with other humans. What's more, humans actually looked down on weapons. If a person spent his life with a weapon, he would be laughed at. Lar was grateful to Nicole for not letting him die in the garbage dump. Like a knight, he protected Nicole courteously and loyally. Even if Nicole became stronger later on, she still didn't have any other weapons. She only had a contract with Lar. The other weapons were only temporary. Chapter 1623. Lar felt that he had delayed Nicole. When the Luna beast attacked the city again, he blocked the attack for Nicole and became half-crippled. With Nicole's help, Lar managed to survive, but no one knew who killed him. Nicole was dumbfounded. She saw Lar turn into a pile of scrap. His arrows were broken and his body was split in half. The person she liked was dead. Nicole was in pain. She hugged Lar's body and refused to let go. The lumps of iron were rusty and lifeless. Weapons gathered around Nicole. They wanted to contract with her. Nicole wiped her tears. She had to find the person who killed Lar. Even if Nicole didn't like Lar, she was still obligated to find Bowler's murderer and avenge him. But when Nicole was investigating, she was killed. She didn't know who killed her or why they wanted to kill her. Was the person who killed her the same as Lar? Nicole's wish was to keep Lar alive. She didn't say that she liked Lar. Lars blocked the attack on Nicole's behalf. Wasn't that just asking for death? Ning Shu was speechless. Why did love have to be labeled with so many labels? You're a human and I'm a weapon. We won't be happy together. I'm too weak. I was picked up from the trash. I don't deserve you. Good love will make you better and more adorable. Ning Shu chewed on his bread and thought. This mission was to keep Lar alive. Also, he didn't know who killed Lar and Nicole. 2 missions. Where was Mei Ziqing now? Lar passed Ning Shu a bowl of water. It was freshly fetched from the river. He boiled it and let it warm before passing it to Ning Shu. He was such a considerate man. They met in the most difficult times of their lives. They were willing to risk their lives for each other. However, it didn't end well. Ning Shu took the bowl and drank the water. The coarse bread was harsh on his throat. Drinking some water made him feel better. Ning Shu looked at Lar. He didn't understand. He dared to die. Why couldn't he accept the feelings of the person who entrusted him? Was it so unbearable to come out of the garbage? I've even eaten garbage before. Archer Lar had a head of black hair. His bangs covered his eyes, making him look a little gloomy. He wore simple and neat clothes. There were fine scars on his face. These scars were very shallow and old. They were not only on his face, but also on his body. Scars from weapons would appear on his body. Seeing Ning Shu staring at him, Lars lowered his head and said, "Let's find a safe place to rest." Ning Shu nodded. "Whatever you say." Larvi put the empty bowl back into his body. Ning Shu was surprised, but his expression did not change. "Master," Lars said thoughtfully, "our weapons all have a small space." Ning Shu was surprised. "Can I have a look?" Lar began to take off his clothes. Ning Shu looked at him with an adorable expression. Lar hurriedly explained, "Master, I have to take off my clothes to show you." Ning Shu nodded calmly. Lar took off his clothes. His body was full of scars. Lar immediately regretted taking off his clothes. What if she saw all the scars on his body and got scared? However, Lar still opened his chest. It was dark inside. Ning Shu calmly walked over. The space was not big. He leaned in and saw some things neatly placed inside. There were bowls, chopsticks, hair rings, and a thumb-sized Luna beast core in the corner. There were people who collected these cores, but they didn't know what they were used for. Every time they killed a Luna beast, Lar would look for the core in its body. It's very neat. You must be a little OCD. Everything had to be placed in a specific place. Lar put on his clothes and said, "These are the things you need, master. They have to be placed in a proper place." Ning Shu was speechless. "But can you keep all the hair in the hairband and put it in there?" Not bad, Ning Shu complimented. He didn't care about the scars on Lar's body. Lar heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Ning Shu didn't notice the scars on his body. These scars weren't from merit. They were from a weapon that hadn't been maintained in time. It was a weapon that wasn't cared about in the past. Ning Shu and Lar found a place and built a simple tent with large leaves. Both of them were smeared with the smell of weeds that the Luna beasts hated. When night fell, there were 3 blood-red moons in the sky. 3 moons. Ning Shu was very calm. He had seen 10 suns before. 3 moons were nothing. The 2 of them huddled together. Ning Shu was bored to death. He flipped through the manual of Lar in his mind. It wasn't a manual. Every weapon was born with various martial arts techniques. Using the martial arts techniques would teach the user how to use the weapon. The higher the level of the weapon, the more martial arts techniques it would have. For example, Lar didn't have many martial arts techniques. Ning Shu's body was circulating the ultimate martial arts technique. However, Ning Shu cursed in his heart. There was very little spiritual energy in this plane. He thought that there would be a lot of spiritual energy. Ning Shu stealthily formed hand seals and set up a yang gathering array in the surroundings. "I'm going to sleep. You should rest too, Ning Shu said to Lar. You sleep. I'll watch over you. It's dangerous at night, Lar said in a low voice. In the darkness, his eyes couldn't be seen. In addition, his bangs were covering his eyes. Ning Shu nodded. You've had a hard time. Ning Shu started to cultivate. However, she was stunned. She realized that she wasn't absorbing the power of the sun. Instead, it was a strange substance. It was fusing into her energy center. Ning Shu had an adorable look on her face. What the hell was that? Where was the power of the sun? As these substances accumulated in his dantian, a vast starry sky was formed in his dantian. Ning Shu was speechless. How did she absorb the power of the stars? Why did she absorb the power of the stars? Was it because there were 3 moons in this world? Ning Shu was just guessing. Who knew what the power of the stars was? This substance had never appeared in the previous world. No wonder they were called moon trees and moon beasts. Did they absorb the power of the stars? A new kind of power had appeared, but Ning Shu still did not know how to use it. Lar was guarding Ning Shu diligently and checking if there were any moon beasts around. Many moon beasts were moving towards Ning Shu. Maybe it was because of the power of the stars. Master, something is approaching. Lar quickly woke Ning Shu up. Ning Shu stretched out his hand. Lar turned into a crossbow and appeared in Ning Shu's hand. When the weapon appeared in his hand, Ning Shu couldn't help but take a second look. The crossbow was completely black. There were scratches on it. Even the arrowhead was missing half of its body. Chapter 1624. When he held it in his hand, he felt as if he was connected to fate. The area between his thumb and forefinger was slightly warm. It was the totem that was formed by the contract between the two of them. The crossbow vibrated slightly. Ning Shu released his mental strength. Many Luna beasts were approaching them. Ning Shu took the initiative to attack. He raised the crossbow and shot at a strange-looking Luna beast. Ning Shu aimed at the Luna beast's eyes. This Luna beast was covered in yellowish-white scales. Its defense should be very strong. Its eyes should be its weakness. Ning Shu pulled the thumb ring on the crossbow. The short arrow flew out at high speed, creating a whistling sound as it traveled through the air. This speed was amazing. The arrow accurately pierced into the Luna beast's eye. The Luna beast writhed in pain and rushed toward Ning Shu. Ning Shu raised the crossbow again and shot at the Luna beast's other eye. The Luna beast was completely blinded. It was spinning in circles on the ground. It kept crashing into the trees around it. Lar transformed into his human form. He grabbed Ning Shu's hand and said anxiously, "There are too many of them. Let's run first." Lar dragged Ning Shu and ran. His hands were trembling. Ning Shu looked at Lar, who was running with him. His hair was split in the middle by the wind. There was more than one scar on his forehead. As Lar was running, he suddenly stopped and took out some herbal juice from his body and smeared it on Ning Shu's body. Ning Shu said, "Don't panic. There shouldn't be any Luna beasts behind us." Lar looked up at the sky, and Ning Shu looked up as well. Then, she felt like she was a little cute. There seemed to be 4 moons in the sky. One of them was not very obvious. "Can you tell me how many moons there are in the sky?" Lar whispered, "Master, we should go to the town now. When there are 5 moons in the sky, the Luna beasts will start to attack. It is very dangerous in the wild. Furthermore, there are many martial masters in the town. When the Luna beasts attack the city, these martial masters will be there to defend against them. Also, there are many weapons in the town." "Master, you can choose better ones," Lar said. "This is the best for you." Ning Shu shrugged. "I don't have money. I don't think they'll let me use those weapons. Besides, I'm just a weakling. I still need your protection. If you don't have me, I will starve to death. Just like in the past, I was so hungry that I turned into my original form. If I don't have you, I will be torn apart by the Luna beast. Ning Shu said directly, it's a good weapon if it's useful. Why are you thinking so much? I've even eaten garbage, moldy food. Who doesn't have a dazed past? You think I deserve better, but the question is, can I really find one? There were some things that needed to be said. It was tiring to be too sensitive. Both Nicole and Lark kept everything to themselves. I'll treat you well, but I won't tell you anything that hurts me. Ning Shu wasn't like that. I'm not happy. I'm not comfortable with you doing this. Ning Shu said directly. If I hurt you, it's none of my business. There's nothing wrong with revealing your bottom line. Both of them carefully tested each other. Like snails, they stretched out their feelers and then retracted them after touching each other. Lars suddenly didn't know what to say. He asked, are you that poor? Poor. Lars didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he felt a little relieved. He was terrified. He had met this woman at the end of his life. He wanted to protect her, but he was worried that he wasn't strong enough. He was originally a waste product waiting for his death. He had already accepted this fate. But now, fate had taken a turn. He was terrified. I'm a defective product, and my abilities are of little value. Let's cancel our contract, Lars said. However, in his heart, he was desperately saying, don't cancel it, don't cancel it, don't cancel it. Ning Shu looked at Lars from the corner of his eyes. He deliberately said some demeaning words to drive him away. He was also silently testing whether the other party would really leave. It was like a girl posting a selfie on her moments and saying that she was very, very ugly. What she said wasn't really ugly. What Lars said wasn't his true thoughts at all. He felt inferior and awkward. What should Ning Shu say? To be honest, it was quite tiring to get along with such a person, but Lars was absolutely loyal. Ning Shu pondered for a moment. So. That's why you should find a powerful weapon, a normal weapon, not a useless piece of trash like me. Lars' hair covered his eyes. Under the blood-red moonlight, his face couldn't be seen clearly. Ning Shu rolled his eyes. You want me to find a powerful weapon, but do you think I have the ability to make a powerful weapon like me? I can protect you. I can protect you until you find a powerful weapon. Believe me, there are weapons that are willing to form a contract with you, Lars said. Ning Shu, Lars was really sensitive and fragile. Nicole was a ray of light in his life. He was both lucky and fearful. How should she answer Lars? Ning Shu organized his words and looked at Lars' blurry face. Without me, what will you do? My fate is on the right track. Dying silently is my destiny, Lars said with his head lowered. Ning Shu, Lars had a glass heart. Ning Shu said, Lars, I can't live without you. Ning Shu raised his hand. There was a black circle mark between his thumb and forefinger. This was the mark of the contract. You're always worrying about things that haven't happened yet. You're making yourself sad because of things that haven't happened yet. We're companions. Please don't say such things in the future. Lars and Nicole really had a hard time loving each other. Nicole refused to accept other weapons because of him, but Lars felt that he was blocking Nicole's path. Both of them were in pain because they wanted to sacrifice themselves. Damn. Ning Shu facepalmed. He was really heartbroken. He was so conflicted. Ning Shu just wanted to complete the mission quickly. Young man, let's just say what we have to say. You can say that you'll only have me as your weapon in the future. Or, if you want to form a contract with other weapons, you must get my permission. It's not that I can't say these things. Ning Shu spread his hands. Since we formed a contract, we're responsible for each other's lives. Lar was silent. Well, he didn't expect a child who lay beside his companions' corpses to have any normal thoughts. He was very humble and sensitive. Ning Shu felt a little tired. Life was short, so why not be more optimistic? It was important to find joy in the midst of pain, young man. Lar looked up. If you have new companions, you can't abandon me. Chapter 1625. Bao Lar had used up all the courage he had in his life to say that he could not abandon him. Ning Shu nodded. I know. We are partners. I will not abandon you. That's how it should be. Tell me what is on your mind. If you don't speak, I won't know what you are thinking. No matter how much he guessed, he might not be able to get it right. If he kept it to himself, it would explode sooner or later. Both Nicole and Bao Lar had been enduring silently. They had thought for each other and sacrificed for each other in the way they thought was right. But in the end, both of them had died. If it had been Ning Shu, he would not have let out a fart. He would have beaten the fart out of you with a stick. Once he opened his mouth, he would talk. He did not have a glib tongue, but he would still say what he needed to say. Otherwise, he would not have a mouth. Repeat what you just said, Ning Shu said to Bao Lar. It is not up to you to decide whether you are strong or not. As long as I think you are strong, that is enough. You are an individual. Do not compare yourself to other weapons. Who did not start off weak and stumble their way to where they were now. Heroes did not care about their origins. Even if they came from a garbage dump or a recycling bin, so what? They could still make a comeback in life. Even if Crossbow Lar were to explain these grand principles, it would be of no use. Bao Lar opened his mouth and repeated, if you have a new partner, you can't abandon me. Ning Shu nodded. Very well. Ning Shu and Bao Lar talked under the blood-red moonlight. They were more open to each other. Living in this world, there were no misfortunes or hardships. Everyone had their troubles. What could they do? They could only find joy in the midst of misery. A Luna beast came towards them. Ning Shu laughed heartily. Lar. Lar immediately turned into Bao Lar. Ning Shu held the Bao Lar and shot an arrow at the Luna beast's eyes. Golden liquid spurted out from the Luna beast's eyes. The Luna beast roared in pain. Ning Shu rushed over. Ning Shu jumped up and kicked the Luna beast's chin. The Luna beast was flipped over. Bao Lar was speechless. Ning Shu leaped onto the back of the Luna beast and shot an arrow at its head. The black short arrow pierced through the yellow-white scales and pierced through the Luna beast's head. The Luna beast whimpered and fell to the ground. The crossbow in his hand transformed into a human form. Ning Shu's Bao Lar raised his hand. Bao Luo looked at Ning Shu in confusion. Ning Shu said, in the future, every time we kill a Luna beast, every time we overcome a challenge, we will high-five to celebrate. Bao Lar hesitated for a moment before raising his hand to slap Ning Shu's palm. Other than the high-five, we have to record the number of Luna beasts we have killed every day and how many Luna beasts we have escaped from in a month. Ning Shu's Bao Lar said. Life was precious, and the idea of sacrificing oneself for others was terrifying in Ning Shu's eyes. Humans are selfish. It's normal to love oneself. If one doesn't even love or cherish oneself, how can one love others? Maybe it's love, but think about how miserable and desperate it must be to live. In fact, Ning Shu wanted to say that the pain of love was because the person you loved was wrong. However, Nicole had just picked up Bao Lar. She should be able to correct Bao Lar's temperament. In this hazy relationship, both of them were in the wrong. Being honest was the best solution. I won't say this, but you should understand my efforts. Oh, what do I understand? I can't read minds. Baolar said, I don't have a notebook, but I can remember it. Oh, then keep it in mind. Baolar nodded and took out his arrow. He cut open the Luna beast's head and found a thumb-sized beast core. This Luna beast was a creature without intelligence. It reproduced like locusts. Baolar wiped the beast core clean and placed it in his body. The moonlight tonight was exceptionally red. It was as if the ground was dyed in a layer of blood. It was extremely horrifying. Let's go to the town now. Ning Shu released his spirit to check if there were any Luna beasts around. Follow behind me, Ning Shu said to the young man. Baolar said, I should be the one protecting you. Let's protect each other. Everything he saw was red. Ning Shu felt that his eyes were blurry as if there was a layer of red cloth covering them. He could not help but rub his eyes. Ning Shu took a detour when his spirit came into contact with the Luna beast. Baolar smeared some wild grass juice on Ning Shu's body. There was a fishy smell. It was unpleasant. It was quite far from the town. They would not be able to reach it in a short period of time. Under the influence of Bloody, the Luna beast was a little restless. Nobody knew if it was excited or not. Baolar said, shall we take a break? Ning Shu nodded. Sure, let's go up the tree. It was a good idea to lie down on the tree branch. Ning Shu hugged the tree and climbed up. With her strength, with a stomp of her foot, she would definitely be able to step on the tree trunk and reach the top. However, Ning Shu estimated that Baolar had a fragile heart of glass. Since you're so powerful, you should look for a powerful weapon. Sometimes, you don't have the same rhythm. That's how tough it is. Seeing Ning Shu climb up the tree, Baolar carried Ning Shu up the tree. The tree then let go of Ning Shu. Ning Shu found a thick tree branch and lay down. His legs were swinging in the air. Ning Shu saw Baolar staring at him. You should take a break too. Don't pull a long face all day. Baolar sat down. His fringe covered his eyes. There was a tiny glow in his eyes as he looked at Ning Shu through his fringe. What are you looking at? Ning Shu asked. She was the one who asked him to save her, not her. It wouldn't do to break up this marriage. You seem. Baolar stuttered a little. He was afraid that Ning Shu would be angry and didn't dare to speak. Just say what you want to say. Say it. Ning Shu hung his legs on the tree branch, swinging leisurely. You seem different, Baolar said. The one who picked him up at the recycling bin was a shy girl. She would thank him in a soft voice and blush. But this girl was calm and leisurely, mature and wise. She wouldn't say those words before. Baolar really wanted to say, give me back my girl. Ning Shu sat up. It's the same. It's different, Baolar said weakly. How is it different? Ning Shu looked at him from the corner of his eyes. This gaze was different. This tone, this was not his girl. It's really different. Baolar felt his heart tremble. Ning Shu nodded. That's right. If you have anything to say, just say it. Baolar, why did you suddenly become like this? I'm Nicole's other personality, Ning Shu said calmly as he flipped his hair. Baolar looked at Ning Shu with a puzzled face. He clearly didn't understand what Ning Shu was saying. It was really pitiful. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.